The tale begins in the depths of winter, on the 2nd of November. After 17 long days of travel, the man believes they've finally arrived in Moldova. There were a number of characteristics listed here about the guy, and he was quite impressive. Joshua mutters that crashing from the heights of legendary power down to this frail state is far from enjoyable. He closes his eyes, musing that life really is a relentless swing between highs and lows. His memory tugs him back to a time when he, alongside many others, stood tall and fought off monstrous beasts, red eyes glinting with ferocity, a grin carved onto his face. He surged forward, cleaving down wave after wave of monsters, with the might of his great sword. But then, he halted. A sharp, burning pain lanced through him as a sword pierced his back. Magic flared and he crumpled to the earth, reeling in disbelief. Who the hell stabbed him? Someone had betrayed him, struck from behind, right in this copy of the game world. When he came to, the realization hit hard. He'd been pulled into a game character's body. Not only that, but he'd been thrown 24 years into the past. Now, he's the Prince of Moldavia in the north, scrambling to thwart a brewing power grab by his uncle. All this, mere days after awakening in this unfamiliar flesh. The whole family inheritance mess isn't exactly his idea of a good time, but this rebellion, it's too significant to ignore. Reading through the urgent notes left behind, he learns he's tasked with sealing the place, since the Lord has departed to address the chaos elsewhere. With no one left to govern the city, someone has clearly seized the chance to stir trouble behind the scenes. It's a critical juncture, and Joshua knows he must return to his domain quickly to bring order. He makes a mental note. Leveling up is essential, and he must identify the one who betrayed him. Just then, he spots a rider approaching on horseback. Curious, he calls out, "Who is this man?" The stranger pulls back his hood and greets him warmly, saying it's been a long time. Recognition flickers in Joshua's eyes. "Housekeeper?" he asks, then frowns. "Have you aged? Something is off." His eyes dart over the man's graying hair, the worn look of his hands. Grabbing the housekeeper by the shoulders, he demands answers, voice loud with emotion. Why is he so stirred? It dawns on him. The original owner of this body must have had a deep bond with this man. The housekeeper opens his mouth to explain something about this place, but hesitates, saying the young master is still in the dark. Joshua, unsettled, raises his voice. Why was I allowed to come back home? Despite arriving ahead of schedule, building his reputation by single-handedly wiping out a squad of orc-baron wolves on the front lines, the man now hesitates and says he can't reveal anything further. He explains that it's because the young master still lacks the proper qualifications. If Joshua truly wants answers, he must inherit his father's title and officially become the ruler of Moldavia. The man emphasizes that this is not just tradition. It's a soul-bound contract. Joshua, frustrated, retorts that Earl Belzer ruled this land, and that role is his now. Is the man suggesting he isn't worthy? It's becoming clearer. His uncle did try to seize the inheritance, but Joshua has returned this time with the intent to settle things once and for all. Yet the man insists, qualification isn't just symbolic, it's something tangible. He admits he doesn't know where the master hid it, but says Joshua should. Joshua scoffs inwardly. How could he know? He's only inhabited this body for a month. Realizing talk won't convince him, Joshua shifts tactics. He presses the system interface, selecting the option labeled Start Scanning. A message pops up. Scanning has begun. Level scan, attribute scan, status scan. All completed, successfully. The scan identifies the man as Van Amos. His role, excellent. His talent, wielding magical artifacts. A divine instrument. Bound by a bloodline contract, he could once transform into a weapon of considerable power. But with the death of his contractor, his level was forcibly reduced to all his attributes and stats reverted to their base values. Race, medium humanoid. Health and mana, also reduced to base. Status, contractor dead. Yet he can still transform into the Wuxi Wei Must Dragon Sword. Joshua furrows his brow. He needs a moment. Could this magic weapon be the legendary Mission God's tool stored deep in the dungeon? He'd missed it before, during the raid on the Myriad Realm Sacrificial Ground. That dungeon had limited mission slots, and those who completed it kept suspiciously silent online. But now, shockingly, it turns out the elusive quest is located right here in Moldova. And this magical instrument isn't just a tool, It's somehow entwined with his family's legacy. He needs more data. The system updates again. Stamina, contractor dead. Force to base level. Incarnation, weapon. Name, Wuxi Wei Must Dragon Sword. Status, alive. Time remaining, 10 days. Current role, 6th generation Radcliffe magical item housekeeper. Skill set, removed. Equipment, black butler outfit. Joshua exhales sharply. Time's not on his side. Van, or Wong, speaks up. He tells Joshua that he's not human, not entirely. Long ago, he and the elders made a contract with the Radcliffe father and son. A vow to serve their bloodline. That contract bound them beyond life. If the master dies, so must the servant. Van laments that he failed to protect his master. His own end draws near. There's nothing more he can say. Even if Joshua suspects the truth, it can only be confirmed when he becomes head of the family and accepts the burdens of House Radcliffe. Joshua nods, absorbing the weight of it all. 10 days left. He asks Van where he plans to go. The man replies that, while it saddens him, his bigger concern now is the sudden arrival of a slew of unwelcome house guests. He's in no state to face them and can't unburden himself to the young master. Joshua declares with cool resolve that he'll deal with these freaks, just like he always has. He promises to wipe them out until not a single one remains. Some time passes, and a loud bell tolls through the city, sharp and urgent. In the chaos, Joshua slams his fist into a guard's face, knocking out a tooth with brutal precision, and snatching the sword that clatters from the guard's hands before it hits the ground. More guards close in on him, forming a tense circle. Joshua, grinning, remarks, "What a charming welcome party." One guard hesitates, squinting, trying to make sense of the situation. Is this really young Master Joshua? Or is he here to reclaim his title? That would get him killed, wouldn't it? Another yells with alarm, rallying the others to protect the city and strike now. But Joshua simply begins channeling an immense surge of red energy, shutting his eyes as it swells around him. The guards rush at him, blades drawn, and he opens his eyes with a flash, unleashing a devastating blow that sends guards flying in all directions, scattered by waves of red force. He sighs and mutters an apology. His weapon broke mid-battle, and it just wasn't good enough. Stepping over the fallen, he walks up to the lone surviving guard and says firmly that it's time to talk. He'll ask, and the man will answer. Right now, elsewhere, a figure rises from a throne, startled. What did he just say? He asks. Is Joshua dead yet? He adds with disbelief. He broke through the city gates? A cloaked figure turns to Mr. Danley and remarks that it seems trouble has arrived. If you've got a problem, the man says smoothly, I'll help you handle it. A towering figure in heavy armor steps forward, adding that he'll take care of the situation before the master gets here. Later, amidst growing tension, one of the guards orders the others to search faster. Don't miss a single corner. These rebels must be found. Hidden in a shadowy alley, Joshua ponders the scene. His uncle was just a merchant. So where did he get this many knights? On top of that, there were other strike teams moving with trained precision. These weren't amateurs. With an average level of 12, these soldiers were clearly seasoned veterans. No way this was a ragtag militia. Someone powerful was pulling strings behind the scenes. But Joshua doesn't care. Numbers mean nothing. He'll push himself to the limit. The captain had told him that Lee was holed up in the city lord's palace. The man had rushed in like he owned the place. Did he really think Joshua was dead? The man in armor tells the captain grimly that it seems nothing can stop this now. Tragic, he mutters. How did he even manage to beat you? The captain replies with a shake of his head. It was just one strike, one hit, powerful enough to crush a whole group of goblins. The armored man studies the footprints in the dirt around him. Judging by the wreckage, the captain probably isn't exaggerating. Sure, he could take down a squad like this, but not with such overwhelming devastation. Based on what Dan had told him, this man wasn't supposed to be that strong. He turns to the captain and says, it's time he returned to his post. As he leaves, thoughts churn. If the master comes, even a silver-level opponent won't be a problem. Still, he can't just let this chaos continue. He has to act. With that, his body dissolves into swirling black energy and vanishes. Time passes. A bespectacled man cautiously peeks from behind a half-open door, watching as the guards walk away. Suddenly, Joshua grabs him by the throat, slamming him back against the cold stone wall. Chris, he says with a dry smirk, didn't think I'd find you here. It's been a while. How have you been? He quickly remembers this isn't the kind of moment for small talk. Chris, struggling, asks what Joshua's doing. "Do you really have to treat me like this? We're family." Joshua chuckles darkly and says, "Given your mental state, I could probably kill you right now and feel just fine about it." Even if they were cousins, he hadn't forgotten what Chris's father did. "And," Chris interrupts, trying to lighten the moment, saying their relationship wasn't that awful. "At least don't look like you're trying to murder me when we meet, all right?" Joshua's tone turns cold. He tells him to forget about whatever bond they had. They were never friends, especially not after his father schemed for the title. Now he demands answers. How many guards are in the mansion, and who's backing his father? He gives him 10 seconds or he'll slit his throat. As Joshua begins to count, Chris quickly blurts out that there are 24 guards inside, 15 at low-level silver rank, 6 mid-level, and 3 high-level. He urges Joshua to trust him, saying he's not one of them. He admits that he never supported Dan and only snuck out because he didn't want to be involved. Joshua considers that. He hadn't realized Chris wasn't vying for power like the rest. Chris insists he's serious. He's fully behind Joshua in this fight for the title. If Joshua succeeds, he'll help him. Joshua asks if that means he'd be okay with dying here. Chris answers flatly, "It doesn't matter. He already betrayed his own mother. Whatever they have left as father and son is nothing. Not everyone wants to be royalty," he adds. He's got a fiancé in the South, his own chemistry lab, and dreams that have nothing to do with ruling. "Out here, it's not just Kuroshio you're up against," Chris says, almost shivering. "You've got to survive these mountains too. Winters are so brutal, even bears freeze to death." As for who's pulling the strings behind all this, he's not sure, but he has his suspicions. Before he can go on, Joshua suddenly hurls a dagger straight toward him. "You've told me enough," he says coolly. Chris flinches but turns out to be unharmed, because the dagger wasn't meant for him. Instead, it strikes something dark, a slithering presence of black energy lurking just behind him. The dagger drops to the ground with a dull clang, and from the dispersing shadow, a man in armor steps out. Chris stares in disbelief. What is that?" Joshua narrows his eyes. "A shadow assassin," he guesses. "One who's mastered the art of suppressing spiritual power, huh?" He can't help but be impressed. An assassin capable of using sonic camouflage while wearing heavy armor? That takes serious skill. "This is just level 1 concealment," Joshua mutters to himself. For anyone else, it might have worked. But for him, this sneaking method is as subtle as an alarm bell. When someone moves with sound suppression like that, it leaves a vacuum. Even an idiot would know something's off. The knight thinks to himself. His supernatural power allows him to manipulate magic and cloak sound alike. He'd vowed never to speak, never to open his mouth. But even then, he didn't expect to be found out so fast. Not even a voice transmission would work now, no matter how strong his will, which means psionic attacks won't land either. He's crippled here. He can't unleash half his strength. There's no choice but to retreat. Joshua notices the hesitation in his movement. Trying to run now? He grabs a nearby spear and hurls it with full force at the knight. The weapon tears through the air, nearly striking him, but the knight quickly casts a spell and repels it just in time. Joshua's eyes narrow as he catches sight of something in the knight's hand. "An advanced stealth scroll," he mutters. The spear crashes into the building behind, sending chunks of debris collapsing, hiding the knight from view. Chris peers through the dust. "You done throwing things?" Joshua scowls. If only he still had eyes sharp enough to see through everything. No, he thinks. He got away too quickly. I couldn't even give chase. He remembers what Chris said. There was someone shady backing his father. Could it be black magic? Chris finally answers, voice low. It's the Wilson family. Among the 4 great northern nobles, only they had a reason to strike. This was a family of blacksmiths, not just known for crafting exquisite weapons, but also for enchanting them with magical properties. However, with so many dwarves residing in Moldavia at the time, the family's weapon-crafting prowess was being stifled and overshadowed. This tension was the smoking gun. Chris suddenly sensed a presence behind him. Spinning around, he quickly uncorked a vial and splashed its contents behind him. The liquid revealed a hidden figure in plain sight. Joshua, puzzled, asked aloud, "Why are so many people hiding around here?" Standing before them was a slightly dazed girl, staring at them with wide eyes. Moments passed in silence. Before Joshua commented on how silently she'd been creeping around, he wouldn't have noticed her at all if it hadn't been for the faint scent she carried. He could tell she meant no harm. If she had, Chris would already be dead. That was the only reason he was giving her a chance. Still, he called her a stalker. The girl asked what smell he meant. She had only come because she wanted to see Joshua of the Radcliffe family for herself. Joshua grabbed her by the shoulder and told her she needed to come clean, say where she was from, and keep her voice down. He could tell from the scent of her newly purchased leather sheath exactly who she was. She introduced herself as Noel and Wilson. That was her purpose in being there. Chris cut in, asking if she was from the Wilson family. Of course, he should have known from the color of her hair. Silver hair, silver eyes, and a vacant stare. Marlon tensed at the realization. Noel raised her hand calmly, asking if they were seriously going to kill people over this. She was just like her cousin, not interested in fighting over inheritance. So why was she there? She wanted to see if she could go along with Joshua's plan. Her older brother's stubbornness had dragged her into this whole mess. It impacted her too, honestly. With half the Wilson production branches in Moldova, the chaos unfolding here was wrecking her future plans. She was on their side now, no question. And frankly, she saw no problem with killing her brother. Also, could Joshua let go of her shoulder already? He did, telling her there was no need for more chatter. He was going to kill his uncle and ruin her brother's schemes. If anyone wanted in on this plan, they had better follow him now. Noel asked if he seriously planned to walk right into the mansion like that. Chris chimed in. Shouldn't they make a plan first? Joshua didn't have time for plans. He would march straight to the city and take the man's head. He might have had time once, but that was all wasted now, thanks to her and those meddling soldiers. She acknowledged his strength, recalling his 100 orc kills in the war. Still, shouldn't he at least take a weapon with him? Noel confidently mentions that her older brother is also arriving in Moldova today. He's already a gold level, and he's bringing silver level fighters into the mansion. No matter how strong Joshua might be, he can't take them all on alone. Joshua glances at his system window, realizing he's still 2 levels short of reaching gold. At his current strength, he doesn't stand a chance against them, unless he has a powerful weapon. Then maybe, just maybe, he could pull it off. Suddenly, Joshua drops his item and collapses to the ground. The others rush toward him, asking what just happened. A strange mark begins glowing on his hand, shining so brightly it pierces through the fabric of his clothes. Joshua stares at it, stunned. "What's going on?" he mutters. Everyone turns their attention to Joshua, as he lies there, unmoving for a brief moment. Slowly, he pushes himself up, eyes locked on the mysterious mark etched into his skin. The runic pattern. It's exactly like the Radcliffe family crest. Could this symbol have a greater meaning? A realization dawns on him. He rises to his feet and tells the others there's no need to worry anymore. For now, they just need to hold on until tomorrow. That's when the good news will come, especially for them. He eyes the hidden branch behind them with interest. There might be an opportunity for collaboration someday. A little later, Joshua walks toward a familiar building, stopping in front of a gravestone. As he enters, the searing pain in the back of his hand flares up even more intensely. Right here, of all places. This was where his father used to bring him every Sunday as a child. Then, a voice announces that energy has been detected, matching a particular frequency, one aimed directly at Joshua Van Radcliffe, a son of the Radcliffe bloodline. In response, the floor beneath him begins to shift, slabs sliding away to reveal his family crest glowing in ancient inscriptions. From fire born of steel, eternal wisdom, reads the inscription. Iron hall, steel storage. Joshua starts descending the staircase. He recalls reading a line like that in the intro to the copy unit, a gateway to all worlds, tied to a forsaken sacrificial field that unlocked at the end of the game's 3rd edition. He steps into a chamber filled with mysterious instruments. Joshua lifts his hand, the glowing mark pulsing. Instantly, a field of weapons materializes before him, all embedded in the ground. He wonders if the Radcliffe family had ties to this copy world. As he inspects the area and checks others' panels, it hits him. Everything here is a magical item. He starts connecting the dots between his Radcliffe lineage and the runic emblem on his hand, especially considering the talk of family inheritance. It seems that the rune itself not only links to the magical items but also matches the ancient family crest, signifying rightful inheritance. With effort, Joshua grips the hilt of a massive sword stuck deep in the earth and struggles to pull it free. The massive blade embedded in the earth, the rune on his hand shines brilliantly, and with a final pull, the sword breaks free from the ground. He hoists it overhead, sending a cloud of dust flying from its blade. Just then, a voice echoes, saying he's now bound. That very blade. The voice mentions he had been restrained. The sword begins to radiate magical energy, not the kind that heals or harms, but something different, something alive. Then, out of nowhere, a hand reaches out and the sword transforms into a white-haired girl, with hair as white as snow. Joshua stares at her, stunned. She opens her eyes and speaks for the first time, addressing him as master and noting that this is their first meeting. She explains that she follows the Radcliffe bloodline and is bound by an ancient contract. Her name, she says, is Yang Akal, destroyer of swords. But he can simply call her Young. Joshua is baffled. Is she a weapon that becomes a person, or a person shaped like a weapon? Maybe he's misunderstanding something. Jung assures him that from this moment forward, she will fight by his side. Together, they will carve a path through destruction. Joshua affirms that the contract has been sealed. They both echo the words, that through the ancient bond, their fates are now entwined. With his sword, they will bring forth great glory, swearing this oath in blood never to be broken. As their hands touch, the pact is sealed. A brilliant light bursts through the room, swirling streams of energy around Yang. That same energy pulses from Joshua's arm and chest, radiating with power. The system displays a notification. Her name is Yang. Divine Weapon. Excellent form. Her race is Divine Weapon, with the ability to transform into a sacred blade bonded to her master. She's currently at Silver Level 23, though her challenge level is physically. She's a small humanoid with otherworldly origins, a sword form measuring 197 centimeters in length. She has vibrant vitality and can shift into her weapon form, aptly named the Swordbreaker. No status class, but she's noted as the 7th generation of divine weapons forged to slay origami and servants. Her innate traits include a spiritual body, no need for food or rest, exceptional endurance, and a powerful cutting edge. However, she's vulnerable to weakening auras and targeted purging. Her transformed state lasts an hour, with a 24-hour recharge, and when she becomes a weapon, her master gains half her health points and 1/5 of her stats. She's even equipped in a striking double-breasted blazer. Because of their contract, Yang becomes a peerless weapon fit to change the world. Joshua admires her potential. Being a magical item, her abilities will only grow over time. It's no wonder the old man had chosen Wang, another living weapon, as his assistant. Joshua introduces himself formally as Joshua Van Radcliffe, her contractor. He'd like to share more about himself, but now isn't the time. A battle is on the horizon. He asks what she thinks. Jung smiles, saying she's eager to help him win. She'll gladly follow him. Joshua prepares to leave, declaring that the stage is set. The final act is about to begin. A little while later, on the stone stairs leading to the castle, bodies of fallen guards lie scattered. Joshua pushes open the castle doors, announcing his return. He's waited long enough. Now it's time for Jung to truly shine. She responds with calm resolve, telling her master she's ready. Suddenly, an arrow slices through the air, nearly striking Joshua's head. With lightning-fast reflexes, he snatches it from the air and scoffs. A coward's tactic. For someone who's survived countless battles and endured volleys of arrows, these flimsy enchanted bolts are laughable. From the shadows, a hooded figure grins, taunting him. Rumors said Joshua was extraordinary, but clearly, he's just a fool. Instead of taking cover, he walks out into the open. These mercenaries must be garbage if they lost to someone like him. Joshua challenges him. If that's what he thinks, why not prove it? The hooded man fires a rapid barrage of arrows, replying that he was planning to do just that. Joshua swiftly snatches all the arrows hurtling toward him. Not a single one gets through. He catches them effortlessly. He compresses the arrows into a tight ball in his hand, and coolly states that his opponent is weak. The archer recoils, jumping back and grabbing onto a column for support. He pulls out a fresh set of arrows, gripping them tightly. Then he leaps, firing from multiple directions in a frantic barrage. Joshua, still holding the ball of arrows, hurls it straight at him, deflecting the incoming shots with pinpoint precision. The projectile nearly lands a direct hit, but a knight suddenly steps in, blocking it with a shield just in time. The archer thanks the knight for the assist. Behind them, another figure claps mockingly. The knight warns the archer to stay sharp. Joshua's power clearly surpasses the silver level, maybe even beyond that, although their intel still marks him as silver. A group of armored fighters materializes around them, armed with a variety of weapons, ready to clash. Joshua glances at them and scoffs, calling them nothing more than insects. One of the guards yells that he must be insane. Outnumbered and unarmed, how does he expect to win? Another knight cuts in, offering him a swift death if he surrenders now. Joshua responds by removing his armor, stretching out his arms and confidently declaring that he'll return their threat tenfold. The guards begin to chant and charge, unleashing magic, firing their weapons and rushing forward. Joshua, unfazed, questions how a worthless, low-tier NPC could have the nerve to threaten him. He slams his foot down, generating a powerful shockwave. Arrows, still glowing with enchantment, continue flying at him. A massive cloud of dust erupts where Joshua stood just a moment ago. Fierce wind blasts ripple through the room from the impact. In a flash, Joshua reappears right in front of the knight who told him to surrender. He grabs the knight by the head and sneers. Does he really think Joshua needs a weapon to kill someone? Then, with brutal force, he slams the knight's head against the floor. The room falls into stunned silence as everyone watches in disbelief. Joshua straightens up and calmly asks if anyone else still wants to continue. His tone makes it clear he's ready for more. Just then, the man with the crossbow spots a sword flying directly at him. It's too fast. He doesn't have time to react. The blade strikes his shoulder with a sickening impact. The remaining guards charge at Joshua without hesitation. He slips past the shield-bearer's strike and lands a brutal hit to the back of the man's head in one swift motion. Joshua mocks their flashy powers and skills, asking if they're just for show. Still, the other warriors press on, charging with weapons ready. Joshua catches the shaft of a spear mid-thrust, shoving the attacker back with both hands before hurling him forcefully into a nearby column. The shield-wielding guard, eyes wide with fear, is blindsided by a returning ball of arrows. He realizes too late. Joshua repurposed that steel arrow cluster as a weapon. As Joshua advances, he steps on another fallen foe and declares that even his limbs can serve as weapons if necessary. He glances over at Ying, apologizing with a smirk. Looks like he still doesn't need her just yet. Maybe next time. But then, more warriors begin pouring in from all sides. Joshua eyes the system window, noting the surge in experience points. These guys might actually be useful. He wonders if wiping out everyone in this castle would be enough to push him up to gold level. He starts to tell her to hold back, but changes his mind. Now is her moment. She tilts her head, reminding him he'd said she wouldn't be needed. Joshua responds that her divine weapon form can only be used for an hour, and they won't get a better chance than this to test it. A scorching aura ignites behind him, burning with power. One knight shouts and points. Joshua must be taken down. All the warriors charge at once, while Joshua reflects that even after all his time traveling and noble status, it's been one problem after another. No rest in sight. But enough is enough. It's time to finish this. He activates his skill. Divine Power, Supreme Intent. And with that, a massive explosion erupts. The explosion blasts the knights backward as Joshua radiates a fierce, fiery aura. He calmly declares that he only wants to test his strength, nothing more. With that, he slams his fist into one of the warriors, sending the man flying a great distance. As the warrior's mace tumbles through the air, Joshua catches it with ease. He shoves off another attacker, then swings the mace with brutal force into yet another enemy. Without pause, he dives into the thick of the warriors, tearing through them one by one. He mutters that they're pathetically weak, grabbing one by the head and sneering that they're nothing but trash. With a flurry of punches, he crushes his foes, casually noting that he's killed hundreds of thousands like them before. It's honestly starting to get a little tedious. As the warriors fall, a wave of aura erupts. One man flares with a vivid blue flame and shouts at the monster that his end has come. The warriors around him also ignite in blue fire, but Joshua, slightly annoyed, says he's busy at the moment. The system chimes in. Divine Power, Supreme Intent. 5 seconds remaining. Joshua frowns. What a letdown. Another wave of enemies charges him, weapons raised. But none of their attacks land. Confused, they look up and realize he's above them. The system counts down. Only 1 second left. Joshua kicks off from the ceiling, fist drawn back, ready to end it. He rockets toward them, flames blazing violently from his body. The warriors aim their spears, shouting that he must die. But Joshua smashes through one spear with a kick, obliterating its wielder, and as he slams into the ground, the sheer force causes the castle walls to buckle and collapse. Ying stands a distance away, unfazed, calmly brushing her hair back, as the entire building crumbles before her eyes. The divine skill's duration ends, and Joshua emerges from the wreckage, standing among the ruins. A powerful gust of wind sweeps through the sky above, striking a bird mid-flight. Joshua surveys the battlefield, thinking, "It seems there are no enemies left. The estate lies in ruins, but Joshua knows it's time to purge the city. He's already cut down at least half of the patrols and silver guards. Time isn't on his side. He knows that much." Yang shoots him a look full of disapproval. Joshua offers a quick apology for going too far. He explains that he intended to save the destruction for a better moment, but the timing felt right. Yang snaps back, saying she'll never step into the king's chambers again. He's just annihilated them. The living room was once adorned with red cedar furnishings. The walls were alive with magic-infused artifacts and intricate bas-reliefs. The second floor alone held wealth beyond measure. It's all gone now, a massive loss. Joshua bitterly notes that the Wilson family, along with his uncle, assisted the enemies in looting his property. The estate's been abandoned ever since, and he's certain of their betrayal. He glances at the system window showing his current stats, calculating what he needs next. Just 2,400 more experience points to hit level 31 in the gold rank. Multiple system windows pop up, listing recent achievements. He muses, it's not such a big hurdle after all. Joshua wonders aloud if all this gain really came from just one mansion. If he had known the reward was this good, he never would have let the mercenaries escape. Ying, curious and calm, asks where they'll head next. "Are we going to the city to fight?" she inquires. Joshua doubts the city's mercenaries will be bold enough to show themselves after what just happened. Instead, he says, they'll head to the church square and ring the bells to let the townspeople know their rightful lord has returned. Just then, a fierce wind sweeps through. Joshua halts mid-step, sensing a shift. "He's arrived earlier than expected," he says grimly. "The plan will have to change." The wind gathers and spins into a dense sphere. Joshua can feel the power emanating from it. A gold-ranked enemy materializes, a man with stark white hair and piercing gray eyes floating in the sky. Joshua narrows his eyes. "Brother Naylan," he mutters, recognizing one of the Wilson family's dark hands. He's been anticipating this confrontation. The system pings, asking if he wants to convert achievement points into experience. Joshua accepts the prompt without hesitation. Brother Naylan moves fast, cutting through the air like a blade. He soars straight toward them, swift and silent. The impact of his strike triggers an explosion, sending nearby guards flying like leaves in a storm. The young man, shaken, cries out, "How is this even possible?" The system chimes in. Joshua has leveled up. His experience now stands at 617, but he needs 8,000 for the next level. Still, the gain is tangible. Joshua glares at his opponent and snarls, "Who gave you life? And why are you so weak?" The man stumbles back, ripping himself free from Joshua's grip. With a quick leap, he retreats, desperate to put distance between them. Moser stares at Joshua in disbelief, thinking this just isn't possible. Everything he knows tells him that no one from the Radcliffe family should be capable of power beyond the silver rank. Yang grabs Joshua's hand and lifts with him into the sky. The marks on their arms begin to glow brightly. A brilliant flash erupts, illuminating the entire city in radiant light. Moser watches, wide-eyed, as a wave of magical aura surges toward him. Joshua stands firm, sword in hand, declaring that Moser will be the first to fall as he climbs toward gold rank. He warns that Moser must draw his weapon now or die. Rising to the challenge, Moser unsheathes his sword and declares his name, Moser Wilson. Joshua calmly replies with his full name, then lunges forward, clashing steel against steel. Moser strains to block the assault, and the sheer force of it drives him down the steps. Bursting from the cloud of dust, Moser grins and admits the strike wasn't bad. He's impressed. Joshua charges at him without hesitation, replying that the compliment flatters him. He delivers a powerful blow, which Moser narrowly blocks with his blade. Joshua doesn't let up, launching a relentless flurry of attacks. Moser notes the speed of Joshua's swordplay. It's fast and strong, with no breaks in the sequence. Still, Joshua's just silver rank, so Moser believes he should be able to handle this. He'll show Joshua the gulf between them. He sidesteps and prepares to strike back, but Joshua spins, blocking the counter with his sword behind his back. Moser acknowledges the move, saying it was well done. The Radcliffe family's strength truly is astonishing. A surge of aura surrounds them both, and Moser manages to knock Joshua back with a powerful slash. Joshua flies several meters, landing on his feet with his sword held ready. Moser wastes no time appearing at his side with a punch, declaring that this is the end. They trade a barrage of attacks until finally, Joshua is hurled into a wall with bone-jarring force. Moser materializes before him, sword poised for the final blow. Joshua snaps out of the daze just in time to recognize the incoming strike. The impact is so fierce that chunks of the wall explode outward in every direction. Moser looks at Joshua and admits his courage is truly commendable. Joshua grins, though his arm is clearly in terrible shape. Moser remarks that Joshua actually chose to block his strike with his bare hand. He's never faced anyone so reckless and bold. Joshua replies that it's because Moser's never gone up against someone truly equal. With a sharp sweep of his sword, Joshua scatters the dust cloud around him. Then he challenges Moser, asking, "Sure, he's gold rank, but how many foes of his own level has he really defeated? How can someone claim mastery of gold rank combat with only a handful of encounters to show for it?" As the haze clears, the damage becomes visible. Moser's hand has been severed. Joshua reflects on the change in energy, realizing that gold rank warriors now possess remarkable regenerative abilities. As long as they're resilient and well-nourished, they can regrow limbs in a matter of days. Even a deep cut can begin to heal within seconds, allowing them to recover combat strength swiftly. And just like that, Moser's hand heals and returns to normal. Joshua wastes no time. He closes the gap and launches another powerful strike, which Moser manages to block. Joshua presses forward, pouring his strength down through the blade, driving it so close that it nearly touches Moser's face. With eyes blazing, he pushes harder and finally snaps Moser's sword in two. The realization hits Moser and unease flickers across his face. He channels the power of light, using it to repel Joshua. Moser's eyes glow crimson as he bursts into the air, unfurling wings of radiant light and activating his wind form technique. Joshua watches with interest, smirking. "Now things are getting fun," he says. Moser closes in fast and lands a sword strike, unleashing a massive gust of wind with the blow. He believes that wind form will grant his weapon an elemental advantage, powerful enough to slice through most mundane materials. But to his shock, Joshua's massive two-handed sword doesn't even bear a scratch. At that moment, a system window appears in front of Joshua, asking if he wants to activate his ultimate skill, Rage. He accepts, and what happens next stuns Moser. To him, it looks like Joshua has grown in size, a towering, fearsome figure now standing in his place. Joshua lands a devastating blow, sending Moser flying back several meters. Without pause, he charges forward again to deliver another strike. The two warriors clash at blinding speed, exchanging a flurry of blows. Moser reels at the onslaught, wondering how, after all these consecutive battles, this monster of a man still has more tricks to play. His sword is knocked clean from his hands, and for a moment he questions, could he really be defeated by some unknown young upstart? No, he tells himself. That's not how this ends. He gathers a surge of energy into his palm and unleashes a powerful punch that kicks up a wild wind. But what he sees stuns him. Joshua has caught the punch midair with his bare hand. Calmly, he says he's got him, then drives his sword home with the other hand. Moser, bleeding heavily, collapses to the floor and whispers in disbelief. How could he lose? Joshua looks down at him and admits it wasn't bad. That last counterattack, right before death, was impressive. But sadly, Moser never had the chance to unleash his full potential. Yang reappears in human form and asks her master if the battle is finally over. Joshua nods. Whether it was his scheming uncle or the so-called golden warrior of the Wilson family, he's finished with all of them. They thought themselves clever, but they were just arrogant fools. No need for endless words. He slaughtered them all. Yang admits she doesn't really follow all this political drama, but says he only summoned her for 2 minutes. Isn't that a bit too quick? Joshua laughs. Yes, 2 minutes is fast, but he's sincerely thankful. Without her divine weapons during the fight, he might have lost. He lacked the gear to fully counter wind-based attacks, so the outcome had been uncertain. Yang says it was her destiny. She's honored to serve in the hands of her master. Joshua agrees, but they need to move quickly. Their next destination, the church. His raid skill dulled 80% of the pain, but once it wore off, his arm would be in agony. That reckless block left him injured. They'd need the priest to heal it immediately. Later, inside the church, 2 priests treat his wounds, casting cleansing and blood reduction spells over his arm. One of the men, alarmed, asks Joshua what happened and why St. Laurent looks like a ghost town with no one around but them. Joshua starts to reply, ready to mention his uncle or Tunnies, but then rises and simply says the bones have been set. The priests finish cleansing Joshua's wounds, preparing to begin proper healing. Joshua, curious but casual, tells the man he doesn't have to answer if he doesn't want to. But isn't he a priest of the Order of Divine Punishment? His healing light has clearly grown stronger. He then asks if the artifact is really capable of transforming various types of light magic into one specific form. Tani confirms he's right. Divine rune gear, forged from spiral crystals, can convert even aggressive spells like Holy Smite into healing magic, like Celestial Light. To power such an artifact, the bishop led nearly all of the city's guards and priests up the sacred mountain to offer a collective prayer. That's why the church is nearly empty now. Only 7 people remain. If Joshua had attacked at any other time, taking the city wouldn't have been so easy. And Tani isn't oblivious. He used to be a silver-level warrior himself, capable of reaching gold under the right circumstances. He arrived like a hurricane, battered and wounded. Tani asks if it was Joshua who killed all those people along the way. And just then, a single droplet of glowing energy lands on Joshua's wounded arm, activating the spell. Joshua nods. Yes, it was him. His uncle, the other uncles, loyal soldiers and followers, they were all slaughtered by his own hand. Tani stands and begins to laugh, catching Joshua off guard. He explains he hadn't expected things to unfold so quickly. Just a few days ago, he received a letter. Joshua takes the letter and examines it. He opens it and reads. The message is addressed to the new head of the Radcliffe family, Joshua Van Radcliffe. By the time he's reading it, the city and its infestation should be purged. The letter was entrusted to Tunney's, a devout and loyal friend, to ensure it didn't fall into the wrong hands. Joshua will need to confirm his identity. The letter is signed, Your humble servant, Van. Meanwhile, Yang wanders through the church quietly observing. She reflects on how much the city has changed. Something glimmers in her eyes. She's staring at a statue of a man holding a sword. With deliberate effort, she reaches out toward the Radcliffe, family crest engraved on the blade. But just before touching it, she pulls her hand back. She mutters that she shouldn't be touching other people's things so freely. At that moment, a door behind her creaks open, and Joshua steps through, saying they'll have to leave soon. Tunney's follows and, with a smirk, asks if this is Joshua's new maid. He recalls that all Radcliffe servants were always young, especially Wang and his grandfather's attendants. But he adds, this one looks too young. Exploiting children is illegal, Joshua deadpans. Joshua tells Tunney's he can think of Ying as his sister. She's not a child anymore and certainly doesn't do housework. Mahtani replies that in that case, he'll draft a formal announcement on behalf of the heir to the throne. Once the snowstorm clears, they'll gather the townspeople in the square and declare Joshua's succession. Until then, he offers the special guest quarters for rest. Joshua gratefully accepts, saying he'll leave the arrangements to him and sincerely thanks him for the hospitality. Tunney's departs, whispering something to the priest as he goes. Joshua stands silently by the window, observing the snow-covered street below. Ying approaches with a tray and gently offers him a cup of coffee. He thanks her, then asks if she thinks he's strong enough to make a contract with another divine weapon. She replies that it's hard to say, but when it comes to magic, his talent is undeniably extraordinary, perhaps even beyond known limits. In the past, most people found it hard just to be near a divine weapon, let alone wield one in battle. Many could only temporarily activate one after forming a contract. Yet when Joshua first touched her, the bond was instant, and he wielded her in combat with ease. At his current strength, he faced no trouble summoning or holding her. Many others failed to last more than a few minutes. Most collapsed from exhaustion after 10 minutes. But even though Joshua only fought for a couple of minutes this time, she believes he could easily last an hour or more without tiring. Still, forging a contract with 2 divine weapons simultaneously might be a feat beyond anyone, even him. No one in history has ever done it, which is why so many ancient divine weapons remain sealed in the armory. Joshua asks if, given his abilities and the Radcliffe family's legacy, such a contract could still be possible. Ying lowers her head and quietly asks if she's done something wrong. Joshua gently pats her on the head, telling her not to worry. She did wonderfully. There's no need to take it to heart. He assures her he's not looking to replace her. He just wants to understand his own limits. And for now, she's more than enough. He pulls the letter from Van out of his pocket and begins to read it again. It addresses him as the young master, likely now the ruler of the city. By the time he reads it, the sender expects to be dead, and Joshua will have purged the city of its vermin. Tunney's, it says, is a loyal friend and devout priest. Van entrusted the letter to Tunney's, hoping Joshua would one day understand its importance. He urges Joshua not to mourn him. Instead, he must complete one last duty: deliver Lord Dung's body to the family's funeral grounds. As a divine weapon, Joshua's responsibilities go beyond battle. They include guardianship of the Radcliffe lineage. It didn't matter which of the two divine weapons he chose. What mattered was that he came to understand what their lives meant. The letter urges Joshua to listen, to understand the origins of the divine weapons and the true essence of the Radcliffe family's contract. Joshua wonders if he's finally about to uncover everything. According to the letter, divine weapons aren't of this world. More accurately, they were creations of God, born in other realms that were later consumed by demons and monsters. To truly grasp their beginnings, one must look far back, 347 years ago, during Starfall, or even 484 years ago. At that time, this very land was covered in scorched earth and volcanic eruptions. Humanity was locked in battle with massive, monstrous creatures of every shape and kind. A dwarf, Ironbody MOA, grumbles that they've been fighting non-stop for 4 days. He wonders aloud where all these monsters are even coming from. A Radcliffe clan member suggests no one really knows, but it might be linked to the appearance of a black dragon. Someone calls out to them. The Radcliffe man says they should go look for themselves. Alongside a warrior named Vlad stands another, Scarlet. Together, they arrive at the site of a newly opened, mysterious portal. Scarlet remarks that it looks like a monster's den. Maybe they should try sealing it. But Radcliffe is focused on their real target, the black dragon, Elba. He's convinced this rift has opened for a reason, so why not step inside and find out? Vlad tries to stop him, but Radcliffe ignores the warning and steps through the rift anyway. The others stare at the portal in disbelief. Lois comments that these monsters are unique, and he wants to understand them better. He reaches into the rift and watches in shock as his hand stretches unnaturally. Without hesitation, he dives in completely, falling into the unknown. At the bottom, he's suddenly ambushed by a monstrous beast. Just in time, Radcliffe appears and drives his sword into the creature's head. He smirks and asks if Lois really decided to join the fight. It seems their work is just beginning. Moments later, Scarlet and Vlad step through the rift to join them. Weapons drawn, they find themselves surrounded by an overwhelming horde of monsters. Radcliffe turns to his companions, giving them a final chance to turn back. But there's no hesitation. He charges forward, shouting that the time to attack is now. Sometime later, the monsters lie defeated around them. Vlad calls out to the others. He's found something, and they should come take a look. As they approach a massive door, someone wonders aloud why the monsters seem terrified of this strange metal. They pull the heavy doors open, preparing to step inside. Peering in, they're all taken aback by the sight before them. Stepping into the room, they ask in awe, "What is this place?" They move deeper in, and Radcliffe reaches out to touch a pillar covered in bizarre, glowing patterns. As soon as his hand makes contact, a jolt of energy courses through him, and he loses consciousness, only to be thrust into a vivid vision of a futuristic world. In it, sleek spacecraft are under siege, bombarded by volleys of gunfire. People look on in shock, while others, all dressed in identical uniforms, flee in panic from monstrous swarms closing in. These beasts, crawling and soaring alike, descend upon a ruined cityscape. In the shadows, scientists perform experiments on helpless humans, and strange, unnatural growths begin to appear on their hands. Those same mutated hands are later raised, clutching weapons in celebration of a hard-won victory. But triumph is short-lived. Eventually, the last surviving figure stands engulfed in flame, surrounded on all sides. He's atop a pile of both monster and human corpses when enormous beasts close in and devour him. With a gasp, Radcliffe jolts awake. He murmurs that he saw it, hundreds of thousands of origami-like demons devouring an entire world. Morris suggests that maybe if they activate the stone pedestal marked divine weapons, they might unlock a means to combat the onslaught. Radcliffe eyes the pedestal skeptically and says he seriously doubts that something like this could be activated by a simple switch. A letter from Wang explains that the following day, the legendary witch Kabbalah Chaos, along with 4 elite Zango warriors, stepped through a portal to another world. There, they extracted a black stone and sealed the rift. Kabbalah Chaos later joined forces with Maya, and together they forged the first divine weapon in a male form. Kabbalah reveals that she layered the weapon with countless protective enchantments, ensuring that no evil gods from other worlds could track it. For those ancient beings operate on instinct, and should even one of them locate their universe, it would trigger an immediate, all-out invasion. That's why, Radcliffe says, the existence of divine weapons must remain a secret. The fewer who know, the safer their world will be. In the name of lasting peace across these lands, the letter stresses that the divine machine and its weapon must remain forever hidden from the world. It goes on to reveal that the divine tools now in their possession were forged from a fragment of bone cut from Joshua's own wrist at birth. These weapons possess no inherent shape. Instead, their form is molded by the will of their wielder into whatever configuration suits them best. Over the last 10 years, these divine weapons have slowly evolved, finally settling into their true form, a perfect extension of Joshua as a warrior. The Scarlet family's Vlad had once followed the Radcliffe clan north, but 4 generations later, their descendants forgot the oath they made to safeguard the secret of the divine stone and the lurking danger of gods from other worlds. Of all the dwarven clans, only Ironbody remembered the core forging technique for divine weapons. Since then, the Radcliffe family had taken up the solemn task of sealing and guarding the gateway. Wang, a 6th-generation divine weapon, had existed for over 300 years. His presence was carefully hidden from the gaze of gods beyond this realm. For centuries, the seal on the gate held strong. Count Bello, Joshua's father, rarely spared him any special attention because his focus was locked on the war against the origami demons. But half a month ago, everything changed. A massive volcano erupted, just as expected, a sure sign that hordes of monsters were about to appear. This time, however, the gods sent greater power than ever before. 12 gold-level evil gods and hundreds of silver-level ones breached the sealed chamber. They ambushed the Count, overwhelming him completely. Even if Wang had been at his peak, he wouldn't have been able to save the Count from the onslaught. Realizing he was doomed, the Count threw himself into the heart of the enemy ranks, expelling his life energy in a desperate bid to annihilate the invading force. By the time Van reached the battlefield, the Count was already on the brink of death. As per their contract, Wang's existence should have ended with the Count's final heartbeat. But in a final act of will, the Count broke their pact, buying Wang a little more time, enough to prepare a proper funeral for his master. With his passing, the duty of guarding the gateway between worlds now fell to Joshua. He was chosen to carve his name into history by vanquishing the god of the void. The letter warns, no one else must learn this truth. Joshua must destroy the letter after reading. The threat remains real. The god of emptiness will eventually discover this world, and when that day comes, all life will be endangered. Joshua must end their dark ambitions for good. That is the sender's final message. He admits his death is imminent. Sometime later, Joshua stands in the street, flames consuming the letters in his hands. He declares to the wind that he is now the keeper of the gate, and even to his own ears the words sound unbearably heavy. A little later, in the heart of the city's main square, Joshua faces the crowd and speaks. He introduces himself simply and clearly. Joshua Van Radcliffe, their new ruler. Some among the crowd already recognized Joshua, but today he had come to speak of weightier matters. He explained that few likely knew the truth, that his father and his loyal servant had both died in a tragic accident. In the chaos that followed, his uncle attempted to usurp power, claiming the throne and Joshua's rightful title. Though a few of his uncle's knights had been seen patrolling the roads outside the city, Joshua assured them they had nothing to fear. Those remnants would soon be gone. He would personally see to it. Soon, the people would be free to roam their homeland once again, no longer bound by fear. He urged anyone in need to go to St. Paul's Cathedral, where help would be provided. But he warned, do not lie or take advantage, for God would be watching. To further support them, he declared that starting next year, large families would be exempt from paying taxes. The crowd burst into cheers, grateful for their new ruler's compassion. Meanwhile, at the base of the towering volcano, the dwarves were hard at work forging weapons. Seated on his throne, MOA declared aloud, a new divine weapon had been born. He commanded that his hammer be brought forth. A servant bowed and asked what was troubling his lord. MOA responded firmly. He had made a promise to a family, and a promise once made must always be honored. Before him was divine equipment, armor carved with ancient dwarven runes, a gift for the guardian of the gates and a symbol of his oath. At that very moment, in the fortress hidden within the dark forest, a group of knights sat gathered around a long table. Knight Kylie reported that 55 silver-level knights and 25 elite northern soldiers stood ready, awaiting orders. Von Lawrence followed, stating that their 16 mages, including 9 priests, 6 silver-ranked spellcasters, and a single ice mage, had fully charged the magical coils. Their power could obliterate any fortress wall. But one man slammed his palm on the table, cutting through their reports. He claimed none of it mattered. What use were their swords or spells if they were never put to use? Numbers and firepower were meaningless without action. He accused them all of playing dress-up as military commanders while the real world moved on without them. He scoffed. How could they dare call themselves servants of the Lord? That title had to be earned. Infuriated, Kylie snapped back. Had the man forgotten who led the recon mission? He came back with nothing, yet strutted around as if he still commanded legions. Von Lawrence hurled the staff to the ground, demanding that the words be repeated to his face. He wouldn't be looked down on. Not now, not ever. If there was something to explain, it had better be said directly. Or perhaps they wanted to settle it outside like men. Kylie shouted that they should let him go so he could deal with the creep himself. Von Lawrence broke down, tears spilling as he dropped to his knees. It was all just so shameful. They had won the heart of Lord Below, yet when he was destroyed, they weren't there to stand by him. Was this fortress in the dark forest now nothing more than a tomb for the dead? Kylie agreed grimly. They'd messed up, first with Lord Below, and now with the capital. At least they were still breathing. The sergeant added that no one could have foreseen the strength of young Master Joshua. Their new lord had power. That much was clear. But why hadn't he turned to the Black Crow Order first? Together, they could have taken the capital by storm. Why go it alone? Kylie said Joshua had taken on 36 Silver Knights by himself and flattened the mansion. Could any of their knights have done that? They had failed to support their lord when he needed them most. Kylie was so disgusted to be among them that he'd rather charge into a hopeless battle against a horde of monsters, just to wipe the shame clean with his sword. Then, sitting back down in his chair, he sighed that it was too late for talk now. They needed to gather troops. The capital would need soldiers to maintain order. Meanwhile, in the capital, Ying told the master that a letter had arrived for him. Overwhelmed, Joshua groaned. So many letters, and it was only his first day of ruling. Who'd have thought that destroying the mansion also meant losing the staff responsible for handling correspondence? Where was he supposed to find replacements now? If another letter came, Ying could open it. In fact, if it wasn't anything urgent, she could handle the response herself. She probably had neater handwriting anyway. Ying hesitated. How could she possibly do that? The letter looked important. Joshua took it from her hand, broke the seal, and said he'd read it himself. After scanning the contents, he looked up and asked, "There's going to be a banquet?" Later, he galloped up to a grand mansion, where a servant welcomed him, gesturing toward a side entrance. They had been waiting eagerly for his arrival. Joshua, still on horseback, thanked the man, then added that he didn't need to look so worried. If he had something to say, he should speak freely. The young man responded, "My lord, a representative of the Northwind Trade Commonwealth requests a private audience before the event begins." Joshua handed over the reins to the young man and said that in that case, he wouldn't keep him waiting. Inside the mansion, a man greeted him warmly, introducing himself as Alfonso Carlos, a representative of the Northwind trading community. He welcomed Earl Radcliffe to his humble home. Alfonso expressed gratitude for accepting his offer, but Joshua quickly corrected him. He'd only come for the banquet. He had no idea what offer Alfonso was referring to. Being a military man, Joshua had no patience for pleasantries. He told Alfonso to skip the niceties and get to the point. Alfonso was pleased. They were on the same page. He also disliked pointless chatter. He invited Joshua to sit, warning that the conversation might take some time. In the grand hall of the mansion, musicians played softly, servants moved among the guests with trays of food, and the cooks worked busily back in the kitchen. Joshua summarized the situation. With the southern roads accidentally blocked, the northern territories had lost contact with the mainland. Alfonso was hoping to leverage the long-standing friendship between the Radcliffe family and the dwarves to let his merchants pass through the underground routes. Was that the gist of it? Alfonso confirmed it, clarifying that he wasn't asking Joshua to negotiate. All he needed was access to the mountain people. He could handle the rest. Using dwarven tunnels instead of icy passes made the crossing much easier and faster. Everyone stood to gain. Joshua nodded in agreement. He recalled receiving a letter just days ago from Master Mole Ironbody, an elder in dwarven society and an acquaintance of his great-grandfather. As Joshua listened to Alfonso, he reflected that his ancestors had enjoyed generations of good relations with the dwarves. As mayor of the city, he could offer Alfonso a letter of recommendation from the Radcliffe family. It wouldn't guarantee anything, but at least it'd prevent him from being tossed into a lava pit near the dwarven borders. Alfonso bowed slightly, grateful. That would be more than enough. His lord's generosity was boundless. In return, he pledged to repay the favor one day. But Joshua rose and waved it off. He didn't want money. As the city's new ruler, there might come a time when he needed Alfonso's help. If the dwarves agreed to open their tunnels, he'd call in that favor. Alfonso, speaking for the Carlos family, swore to do all he could to honor such a request. Joshua told him not to rush things. There was still a banquet to attend. Alfonso asked to be escorted to the main hall, but Joshua suddenly sensed something unusual. He glanced at the women nearby, puzzled by the scene. Why were there only women here? What kind of situation was this? After all, he was the young, unmarried ruler of the city. So naturally, all these ladies had shown up hoping to catch his eye, trying to catch his attention and climb the social ladder, though not exactly through the most respectable means. One after another, the mothers of these young women approached him, each bragging about their daughter's beauty, talent, or virtue. It was all so transparent. A merchant will always be a merchant. This whole banquet was nothing more than a glorified sales pitch. A girl stepped forward and asked gently how he was feeling. She seemed nervous, as if trying to summon the courage to say something more. But Joshua shot her a cold, intimidating glare, and she fainted on the spot from sheer anxiety. A maid rushed over and caught the girl, turning to another woman in confusion and asking what had just happened. Undeterred, another girl came up and greeted him with a poised, "Good evening." She extended her hand and introduced herself as Janine Vaughn, also known as Joshua, unfazed, removed the glove from one of his hands, his presence growing darker, the air around him heavy with a suffocating aura. He reached out and introduced himself. Janine was so overwhelmed by the force of his presence that she stumbled backward and fell to the ground. Her composure shattered. She panicked. "I can't do this," she muttered and ran off. Joshua sighed. Yeah, he probably overdid it. His intimidation stat was a full that was clearly too much for ordinary people. The system pinged him with a notification. His horrifying face skill deducted 2 points from charm, added 3 points to intimidation, 2 more for intimidating opponents, and made him socially off-putting. His blood-stained past triggered unease in everyone nearby. People instinctively feared him. Even wild animals would rather flee than fight. An additional passive skill chipped another point off his charisma and added 2 more to intimidation. Just meeting his eyes could send chills down a creature's spine. The path he'd chosen wasn't one of kindness. It was a road of death, pain, and endless struggle. Joshua reflected that among all the women he'd tried to speak with, only one hadn't flinched or recoiled. The likely reason? She wasn't human. He turned to Alfonso and suggested they return to his office. Alfonso nodded in agreement. Once inside, Joshua brought up an old incident. "You know about the fall of Ares, right?" He recalled it happened in the year Ares Fortress, located in the southeastern part of the Northern Empire, had been attacked by an unidentified creature. At the time, the city had around 58,000 inhabitants, over 3,000 guards, including 140 silver-level knights and 2 elite gold-level knights. Every last one of them vanished without a trace. Joshua found this comforting, in a grim way. Everything was happening exactly as he remembered. In the final chapter of the game, Imperial Rangers had uncovered massive tunnels, dozens of meters wide, lined with human bones and dripping with mucus. But the tunnels had quickly collapsed under their own weight, leaving no evidence. Then came the true horror. A massive, indescribable worm burst from beneath the city square, releasing waves of demons. The beast spat acid strong enough to consume anything, its body radiating magical interference that severed all spells in a vast radius. It leveled the city's defenses in minutes, triggering an earthquake felt in nearby towns. Joshua handed Alfonso a letter. It was his letter of recommendation to the dwarves. Joshua brings up a request. As Alfonso already knows, there's an annual auction every spring in the imperial capital to mark the end of winter. Alfonso, slipping the letter away, asks if Joshua wants him to purchase something there. He points out that the items sold aren't typically all that pricey, and reminds him that Joshua himself had said he didn't need financial help. But Joshua is thinking about something else. A player in the guild once mentioned that summoning monsters and demons required specific artifacts to break the seals. Among the most notorious are the Silver Key, the Shimmering Crystal, and a variety of powerful magical tomes. According to data gathered by players in the final chapter of the game, the fall of Ares wasn't some random tragedy. Alfonso examines the paper Joshua gives him, naming the Silver Key, the Gemstone, and the Book of Grace. He's impressed with the drawing. Joshua clearly has a hidden artistic streak. Joshua recalls that according to royal records, mages who studied ancient ruins discovered traces of summoning magic, chaos magic, to be precise. Its lingering essence had seeped into the environment, warping nature itself. Apparently, a secretive group had attempted to tear a hole in the very fabric of the universe. No one expected it would result in the deaths of thousands, including the mages themselves. Handing over the sheet, Joshua admits he doesn't know whether these artifacts still exist. It won't be easy to track down even one of them, but if Alfonso happens to spot one, especially at the auction, he must buy it immediately. Joshua assures him he'd be deeply grateful. Alfonso nods confidently, promising that if even one of those items surfaces, it won't escape his notice. Joshua adds that once Alfonso acquires such an artifact, he should send word to the St. Lawrence Cathedral. They'll follow up with further instructions. Alfonso replies that he understands. Joshua smiles, turns his gaze to the window, and remarks how fascinating this world truly is. Together, with their own hands, they will reshape the fate of it. Meanwhile, Ying stares into her reflection, studying her own eyes. She touches them and murmurs that they feel cold and hard. Is this really what people mean when they say eyes? They remind her of glass. Her gaze drifts toward a snow-covered tree branch, where an icicle dangles, catching her attention. She reaches for the branch, but it's just out of reach. Trying harder, she leaps toward it with all her strength, and finally manages to grab it. But the branch snaps, and she tumbles to the ground. Still holding the icicle, Ying notes aloud that her memory says water, when exposed to low temperatures, becomes hard and strong. She scribbles the observation in her notebook, remarking again that this is a fascinating world. Suddenly, she senses something and announces that there's no point in hiding. She knows he's here. He must be on the Radcliffe family estate. It's time for him to show himself. The man assures Yang there's no need for concern. His intentions are entirely peaceful. He's simply waiting for her master to return. Does she happen to know when that will be? Yang narrows her eyes and asks who he is. If he's not an enemy, then proper etiquette demands he introduce himself. She sizes him up and notes to herself that he's not bad. He's almost reached the silver level at such a young age. The man finally introduces himself as Monster, claiming to be an acquaintance of the Black Crows. Yang gives him a skeptical look, clearly unconvinced. She turns to leave, saying her lord will be back shortly. Since Monster insists on waiting outside, she sees no need to invite him in. Monster grumbles that she could have at least been a little more polite. He leans casually against the wall, staring out over the city. He mutters to himself that Joshua is lucky to have such loyal people at his side. A little while later, Joshua returns home and spots a middle-aged man radiating a silver-level aura, one that feels oddly familiar. Monster greets him with a smirk, saying it's been a long time. He must address Joshua as my lord now, right? After all, he owns an entire city. He's been standing here all day just waiting for him. Joshua dismounts from his horse and remarks that a letter would have been more efficient. How was he supposed to know Monster wanted to meet? Besides, he didn't just come to drop off bad news, did he? Monster admits, unfortunately, that's exactly why he's here. But this isn't the best place to talk. He adds that Joshua's devoted little maid didn't even let him get near the estate. Yang, hearing the conversation, asks her master if he knows the man. Joshua says yes, they're acquaintances. She handled the situation well. Then he asks how she's been feeling. Monster walks alongside him and comments that she's become quite the housekeeper, and she's even learning to cook. Joshua nods in approval, saying she's progressing fast. Monster trails behind, smiling quietly to himself. She really is a remarkable partner. Later, Yang is at the stove, cooking something with focused determination. Monster raises an eyebrow and asks, "So she calls you master?" Joshua confirms it, she's his maid. Monster comments that she's still just a child. Joshua cuts him off sharply, saying they're the same age. Why does everyone keep bringing this up? He thinks to himself that her core contains part of the bone from his own right wrist. Technically, the difference between their ages is only a few days. Monster then reaches into his jacket, pulling out a small ornate box. He places it on the table and announces that it's a gift from His Majesty. Joshua wonders aloud why the Emperor felt the need to send a messenger so urgently. Does it have something to do with the powers he's beginning to sense around here? So this is the gift. But Monster says he also brings bad news. And that was the real reason for his visit. If it hadn't been of critical importance, they would have just sent a letter, instead of stationing a silver-level knight outside his castle in this bitter cold. What's happened? Munster asks Lord Earl, adding if he's aware that the Ural fortress has now forbidden any group larger than 10 from passing through. Joshua nods, saying he's already heard about it. Munster takes that as confirmation. Then he must know that unrest is brewing in the Empire's heart. Joshua cuts him off, saying there's no need for so many words. After all, they were both raised in the army. No need to cloud the issue. Munster presses on. A black wave has surged over the Ural Mountains. Strange, indescribable monsters have appeared along the northern edge of the Black Forest, and with them, a strange new illness. According to their estimates, this will be the earliest the wave has come in recent years, and no less brutal. Scouts report that the average level of monsters has jumped sharply. Gold-level creatures could be among them. Joshua shrugs. So what? Another black wave. It's not the first time the Black Forest has spat one out. They always knew it was just a matter of time. Munster reminds him that just because they've survived such waves before doesn't mean they should be underestimated. He may be gold level now, but he's still far from matching the strength of his father. He warns Joshua not to be so casual. The illness changes everything. This isn't some passing flu. He wants more answers. But the reports suggest the source of the plague is constantly moving. He asks Joshua to help him pinpoint where this thing came from. He's brought maps. The first signs of the wave were at the eastern base of the mountains. Then they emerged in the central and southern parts of the Black Forest. Then suddenly, it popped up in the northeast. Now, it's right at their doorstep. After clashing with the monsters, some soldiers were left utterly drained, with some even collapsing mid-battle. The weakest among them suffered terrible agony and often died. Those of higher levels, however, began to undergo strange mutations. The queen enters silently, carrying a tray with tea and cookies she made herself. She still eyes Munster with suspicion, and the tension makes him visibly uneasy. Joshua tells her she can serve them the tea if she wants. He'll keep talking. Munster resumes, explaining that the stronger fighters began to change. Their skin turned a cold blue, their eyes bloodshot and black. Smoke started billowing from their mouths and noses. Their strength spiked, along with their aggression. They became frenzied, losing all sense of self. No fear, no empathy, just raw, relentless violence. They'd slaughter everyone around them until put down. Joshua asks if this disease turns warriors into monster-like threats. Munster confirms. Yes. When an infected attacks a healthy person, the illness spreads. The Royal Society has officially declared an epidemic. Militias from the north, alongside troops summoned from across the world, are struggling to contain both the disease and the wave. Losses at the borders have been staggering. The only good news is that no fortresses have fallen yet. That's why His Majesty sent Munster, to deliver a message and remind them not to lose sight of the threat the Black Tide poses. And he was also asked to present a gift from the Chief Deputy Commander of the Black Crows. You said you'd appreciate it, Munster adds. Joshua raises an eyebrow. What is it? Munster says his armor was wrecked during the Battle of Thomas Canyon. Completely shredded, really. There's no point in writing a report about it, and no time either. So instead, Joshua must accept this enchanted armor as a replacement. It might not be quite as refined as Norman armor, those masterworks forged by the Rain Priests. But still, this set was among the finest Munster had ever laid eyes on. Joshua places his hand on the armor Munster brought and channels his ice magic. A surge of potent energy rushes over him, enveloping his entire body, and piece by piece the armor begins forming around him. Ying and Munster both watch this unfold closely. Every movement, every magical flare, carefully observed. Now fully clad in the armor, sword in hand, Joshua stands ready. Munster asks how it feels. He explains that the same enchantments used on Joshua's previous sword have been applied here, with an added bonus of damage enhancement. The armor itself has been magically reinforced and now boosts its wearer's physical stats. Joshua gives the sword a mighty swing, releasing a sharp burst of wind. Not bad, he says, with a faint nod of approval. Munster notes that when Joshua dons the full armor, his power rises considerably. He doesn't know what the king sent him before, but with this gear, Joshua is going to be a force to reckon with in the battle against the Black Tide. Sometime later, Munster announces he's done his duty and needs to hurry home. He mounts his horse, rides off, and gives a wave. Joshua lifts a hand and waves back. The queen, however, doesn't look pleased. She scowls at his new weapon, and Joshua can't help but wonder why she's jealous over a hunk of metal. A little later, back at the palace, Joshua tells her that weapons only matter when they're wielded properly. She shouldn't view this thing as some kind of sacred relic. His gun is still more powerful than this iron sword, so there's no reason to swap them. But right now, their compatibility isn't high enough. If her transformation wears off mid-battle, they won't stand a chance against the enemy. He needs a backup, right? She concedes, then asks, what would he like to eat? Joshua tells her not to fuss over him. She should go handle the letters that came in today. He'll check them later. She nods, accepting his decision. Joshua settles onto the palace steps, quietly musing that he never expected his bond with a firearm to turn into something so fascinating. And he wonders just what made His Highness think he could hold back the Black Tide and the army of mad demons. With nothing more than this little thing? Joshua touches the box, and suddenly, several intricate magical circles spiral into existence, glowing faintly from the surface. From the heart of the box, a thick stream of black energy spills out, spreading swiftly across a wide area. Joshua stares, caught off guard, murmuring that this must be the power of a dragon. It's a residual spell, what's left behind after slaying and sealing a dragon. Just then, the door crashes open, the entire slab flying. Just past him, startling him even more, Ying lands abruptly, her eyes no longer locked in fury. She spots Joshua, her master, and sees that everything appears to be fine. Her face turns red, and she mumbles that she reacted that way because she felt an immense pressure. What happened here? She asks. Joshua tells her everything's fine. The messenger just brought him something fascinating. She peers into the box and gasps. Is that an anti-dragon stone? Or more accurately, a dragon slayer stone? Joshua thinks aloud. This stone must have been the key ingredient used to seal away the dragon's power. The pinnacle of alchemy. Even a tiny amount applied to a weapon could weaken a dragon's strength, drain its soul, and sap its stamina with a single strike. There's also a rarer version, one capable of shredding dragon-scale defenses with ease. The Dragon Slayer Stone is a final stage refinement of Dragonstone. It merges the power of several dragon stones. Judging by its aura, the outer shell is fully saturated with dragon's blood. This thing's probably killed hundreds of dragons, but then he hesitates. He might not fully understand what he's holding. What if a group of white dragons from the northern snows sensed it and decided to pay him a visit? Even if this is a priceless artifact, what exactly does it have to do with the Black Wave? Joshua ponders. If all these demonic beasts in the Black Wave are dragon-blooded or somehow descended from dragons, then yes, with this stone, he might actually have a fighting chance. Just then, he notices Ying holding something. 2 letters. She hands them over, saying the signatures looked suspicious, so she was going to give them to him later. But when that massive wave of energy burst out, she thought they were under attack. Joshua skims through the letters. Is Diamond the name of the Emperor? He asks. One of the letters states it's addressed to Mr. Ratcliffe. The true origin of the plague, it claims, comes from an unknown and powerful dragon clan. The Black Wave this time is vicious. But compared to the last one, their numbers are surprisingly diminished. The letter continues. Fortresses across the region have had their defenses reinforced, and they're confident these strongholds can endure. Still, as a precaution, the monstrous secretary was tasked with delivering the Dragonstone to ensure the city's protective seal remains intact. If the Black Tide fails to attack, then the planned crusade will launch immediately. But if the dragons do strike, the sender believes that, with Lord Radcliffe's strength and these weapons, they'll have a chance to turn the tide and defeat the plague. For more detailed information on the Berserker outbreak, the letter directs him to another dispatch from the Royal Society for Disaster Protection, signed, God Bless the Starfall Empire, 831st year of the 25th Empire. Joshua examines the illustration, an image of the Black Chaos Dragon. He mutters that he should have pieced this together sooner. The black powder, the crazed monsters, the spiraling ecosystem, it all points back to the chaos born of that black dragon. Apparently, it's a newly discovered species, unearthed after years of study in the central continent, in the heart of the Black Forest before its awakening. At that time, its power only measured at a modest gold level, well within his capabilities. But why now? Why has it emerged now? and as the Black Dragon of Chaos, no less. Slamming both hands on the table, Joshua declares he needs to start preparing right away. A while later, Joshua perches on the city wall, silent and focused. He pulls a small dagger from its sheath and drives it hard into his own palm. The impact triggers a sharp, brilliant flash of light. The dagger snaps cleanly against his skin. After days of relentless training, he announces with pride, he's finally mastered the steel armor technique. Tossing the broken blade aside, he notes that even though he's only reached the first level, the results are already impressive. Joshua stretches, cracking his back. Though it all feels a bit rushed, this breathing method is clearly the most efficient for building combat power, and it doesn't interfere with his permanent buffs. Based on the latest intelligence, the Black Wave is expected to strike earlier this time, by the end of the month or early January. He decides he'd better keep training to guard the fort. As he gazes into the horizon, thoughts of the oncoming tide and the looming gold-level monsters weigh heavily on his mind. That's when he spots a dog sneaking up to the city wall. Looking down, he sees black smoke swirling below. Just as a voice rings out and the trumpet blares, the demonic beasts are attacking. "We need to close the gate now," someone shouts urgently. The guard warns that once closed, the gate's runes will take 2 hours to recharge before it can be opened again. But he's certain it's the right call. A voice yells that the enemy is already attacking. There's no time to hesitate. If they don't close it now, they'll all be dead. The gate slams shut. The guard hurries down the stairs, still reeling, muttering that he doesn't understand what's going on. "An attack? In the middle of this snowstorm?" he says aloud, baffled. But then he sees them, a heap of guard corpses piled up near the gate. He stares in stunned silence. "How did this happen?" he breathes. Something shifts beside him, drawing his attention. Without warning, something lunges at him. He barely manages to raise his shield in time to block the blow. It knocks him back hard. He scrambles to his feet, using his spear for balance. In front of him, a large white wolf snarls, baring its teeth. The guard's eyes widen as he notices a sword, embedded in the wolf's skull. The creature casually pulls it out, and the guard stares, dumbfounded. "Is this a berserker?" he whispers. "Has the wolf gone mad?" Gripping his weapon, he charges, yelling that he'll take the beast down, even if it costs him his life. But the wolf lashes out with a paw, sending him flying several meters back. He crashes to the ground, vision blurring. As he looks up at the towering wolf, he wonders if this is how it all ends. He closes his eyes, but then faintly he hears voices. He blinks and opens them again. Standing atop the wolf's head is Joshua. "This one's different from the others," he says. "It's far stronger." He glances down. "You still alive?" The wolf writhes beneath him, trying to break free but can't. Joshua's voice is sharp now. "What happened here? How did 5 silver-rank winter wolves sneak into the city? If I hadn't shown up, there'd be a lot more dead. I want answers." The injured guard struggles to rise, wincing. "My lord, this was my fault. If only I had shut the gates earlier. But these snow wolves," he gasps. "They're nearly invisible in this snow, and they all had strange abilities. The city guards couldn't hold them, and I'm badly hurt." The restrained wolf snarls, its eyes glowing. Joshua watches it coldly. They've truly gone mad. The whole pack's acting like this one. The guard opens his mouth to warn him, but the wolf strikes first. The wolf glares at the guard with wild, furious eyes, and the guard can't hide his shock. The creature swiped with enough force to shatter its own claws. Yet all it managed to do was tear Joshua's clothing. Joshua mutters that there'd been no proper report from the Black Forest. The fighting there lasted 3 days. At first, he dismissed the report entirely, thinking there was nothing of note in that region. But now, looking down at the maddened wolf, he realizes something terrible must have happened out there. He presses down hard with his boot, and with a sickening crunch, crushes the wolf's skull beneath his foot. Sometime later, Joshua hurls a wounded knight onto the castle floor. He announces the man has 3 broken ribs and serious internal injuries. "He's suffered enough," he says, stepping back and leaving the knight to the care of the Nightborn twins. One of them, Tunnies, asks why Lord Joshua is here. Joshua replies that he suspects the Black Forest fortress has been cut off, surrounded by the spreading Black Wave. He needs access to the communication array immediately. Tunnies nods and tells him to follow. The array is on the 2nd floor. Joshua leans in over the magical device and says he's preparing to initiate the connection. He steps into the center of the formation, channeling his focus toward the link, targeting the northern Moldavian region. specifically the Black Forest stronghold. The machine hums with energy, emitting sharp electrical noises as both of them watch. Tunney's confirms that the connection is syncing with the Northern Territory, Moldavian domain, Black Forest Fortress. The signal stabilizes. Joshua says they need to amplify the transmission vibrations. As the Earl of the Northern Territory, he grants himself authorization. The array responds, power levels increasing, fluctuations intensifying. The device crackles again. Suddenly, the sound of gunfire erupts through the transmission, startling both of them. Joshua grimaces. "That's enough," he says. "This is only getting worse." He doesn't know how long the situation's been like this. Tunney's asks what could be happening over there. Joshua explains that such a strong signal should have come with high-priority clearance. The main line must be compromised. No word has come from the Black Forest Fortress, which likely means conditions there are unmanageable. It looks like they've been hit by the Black Wave. He clenches his fists. Nights are dying out there on the border, and I've been completely in the dark. He chuckles bitterly. It's almost funny. Tunney's frowns. Why are you laughing? That fortress is in crisis. We don't even know how many people have been taken. Joshua replies, I'm laughing because I should have done this sooner. He sighs. Those few peaceful days fooled me. I was careless. And now, this Black Wave. It's only just begun. This is only the opening move. This is just the beginning. The opening of the gates of chaos that will engulf the future. It marks the starting point of his legacy. Joshua reflects on the illusion of peace in this world, knowing that war will soon ignite, soaking the earth with blood and strewing it with corpses. There will be no sanctuary. Goodness won't shield the righteous, and evil won't spare the wicked. The weak will find no place to hide. Only the brave will endure. As the era of smoldering wars and endless conflict finally dawns. Meanwhile, Swordin reports grimly, 50,000 monsters have amassed. He never imagined he'd see so many in one place in his entire life. Laurent speaks up, reminding everyone that now isn't the time to panic. If they want to minimize losses, the troops must retreat from the foothills and regroup at the castle. Kylie objects. Abandon the villages. The people there have no walls, no proper weapons, only farming tools. How are they supposed to protect themselves from bloodthirsty beasts with hoes and cleavers? Warren says that among the monsters are many at medium and high silver levels. Berserker rage makes them even deadlier. If a gold-level beast joins them, the fortress itself will be overrun. But Kylie snaps back that surrender is cowardice. Their only objective is to hold the line for as long as possible. As long as the castle stands, their fight has meaning. If they fall here, the wave of evil will surge into their homelands. He's seen it with his own eyes. The beasts are mad from the black fog, driven only by bloodlust. Yet among the horde are weaker creatures too. If they breach the walls, the Silver Knights can cut them down swiftly. Lawrence curses the fact that the fog is jamming their signal. If not for that, they would have requested reinforcements from the capital days ago. A gold-level warrior could turn the tide right now. Swordin complains that the mages had promised to break through the interference if given time. It's been 3 days, and all they've received from the control room is white noise. Lawrence retorts that shouting won't solve anything, and he reminds them, those very same mages have saved the fortress countless times. Without their support, they'd have already fallen. Kylie adds that this Black Wave is different. It has a leader, a cunning one, trying to starve them out. Such demons haven't been seen in over 70 years. There hadn't even been rumors of a commander. So why are they all emerging now? Later, a weary guard asks if there's still no change. Lawrence grimly confirms, the Black Fog's interference is far stronger than any signal they can send. The other cities remain unaware of the attack. Their communication line is too weak to pierce through. The guard straightens. If death is certain, he'd rather fall beside his brothers in arms than rot in the communications room. Lawrence warns him not to be reckless. Marching to the front in that state is just asking to die. Everyone's scared, but they still have roles to play. He'll take the first shift himself. Go, he orders. Find a mage and have them examine the array again. The guard peers out the window, scanning the horizon. He mutters that it's a good thing birds are scarce in the north. If these beasts could fly over the fortress, they'd have an even worse nightmare on their hands. But then something catches his eye, something strange. The building begins to tremble beneath his feet. What the hell is that? He says, alarmed. Down in the fortress courtyard, the other guards feel the shaking too. Monsters are surging toward the fortress in a wild rush. until suddenly one of them is crushed beneath a massive footfall. A colossal creature, towering and unstoppable, is heading straight for the fortress. Lawrence and the sergeant gape in disbelief. The alarm bell rings out and a guard shouts, "A gold-level beast, it's coming!" It's a massive mammoth, covered in jagged stone growths, lumbering straight for the walls. Sorge barks orders, "Get the artillery ready." What about the witch squad? They need the mages to strike immediately. If they don't hit it with overwhelming force, the half-meter-thick ice armor covering its body won't even crack. The mages shout back that the magic cannon is primed. Lawrence yells the command, "Fire!" The cannon roars to life, and the shot slams into the beast, causing it to bellow in agony. Sword-In warns them not to let up. "Keep firing, that thing's still got fight in it. If it reaches the wall, we're done." Just then, through the communication array, a familiar voice rings out. It's Joshua. "Can you hear me? This is Joshua Van Radcliffe, Lord of Moldavia." The guard responds quickly, "This is Black Forest Fort, my lord." Silver-level warrior Allison reporting. Joshua asks for a status report. "How bad is it?" Allison reports grimly that all their outer forts have fallen. Supplies are down to a third, and the breach killed 53 soldiers with 167 wounded managing to retreat. They had encountered nearly 50,000 monsters hiding within the Black Forest. The black fog draped over the mountains completely disrupted their detection, magic, and communication systems. Meanwhile, the gold-level monster, the massive mammoth, is still charging, even under heavy artillery fire. It suddenly draws in a deep, thunderous breath and begins sucking in the smaller beasts around it. Most of the lower-level monsters are lifted into the air and vanish into the creature's maw. Lawrence and the sergeant are forced to defend the wall, from the few beasts that manage to climb it. Then, just as the gold-level monster stops inhaling, the mammoth suddenly unleashed a blindingly powerful beam from its mouth, blasting straight toward the fortress. Surgeon, witnessing the destructive force firsthand, shouted for everyone to take cover. Joshua, listening through the communication array, muttered grimly, "So it's begun. The beast has started its assault on the fortress." Felsen confirmed it. "Yes, the gold-level monster is breaching the fort now." He sighed, regretful that he never had the chance to swear allegiance to Joshua. But he wasn't going to run. He was heading straight to the front line. Protecting the land was a knight's duty. Joshua cut in, his voice resolute. "There will be no more needless deaths, and you don't need to give your life just to swear loyalty, because I'll be there soon." He pulled his horse to a stop and leapt to the ground. Looking to Ying, he said he was going to take the fastest route to the Black Forest Fortress. She asked, a little worried, "Master, what are you planning to do?" Joshua took out the enchanted item. His armor materialized instantly around him. With a massive leap, he soared into the air, startling the horse below. Flying at incredible speed toward the besieged fortress, he muttered to himself, "Time to take out the trash." Back at the fort, the gold-level monster lumbered toward the breach in the wall. But just as it approached, someone burst from the rubble, knocking chunks of debris aside with a powerful kick. It was Kyle, bloodied but alive. "I'm still standing," he yelled. He took command instantly. "Everyone listen up. Archers, ready your bows. Mages and siege teams, prepare your spells and cannons. Now!" As the horde charged forward, Kyle barked, "Take aim and fire!" A wave of magical strikes flew into the onrushing monsters. One of the beasts countered, charging up energy in its eyes. It fired a bolt of lightning at the defenders, targeting Kyle directly. The blast knocked off his helmet, but he didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, drawing twin blades. In a flash of steel, he severed the monster's head mid-charge. "You wanted to fry me with lightning?" he growled. Then, boom, an explosion erupted right next to him. At that very moment, Sword-In slashed the massive trunk of the gold-level monster with a powerful strike. Lawrence followed up with a spell, targeting the creature's leg, just as he spotted Kylie lifting her sword high into the air. She hurled her weapon straight at the mammoth. The blade embedded itself deep into its thick hide. "Now's the time. Attack!" she shouted. Lawrence didn't hesitate. He began chanting and unleashed a surge of electrical power that coursed straight into the sword. He activated the supercharged magnetic storm spell, an advanced technique loaded with devastating force. The mammoth bellowed in agony, its body releasing thick plumes of smoke where the lightning struck. Sword. In retrieved an enormous staff, infusing it with searing flames. He vaulted toward the beast, channeling all his strength, aiming for a critical blow. The impact of his attack sent a massive burst of fire into the sky. the flames leaping higher than the fortress wall. From within the blazing inferno, Sordin reached into the chaos, grabbing Kylie and yanking her out of danger. As they landed, he panted, "Did it work?" Lawrence, catching his breath, muttered, "It's hard to say. Even at full power, that thing's a gold-level mammoth." They all turned, eyes wide with disbelief. The mammoth stood, wounded, yes, but still on its feet. Thick black fog billowed from its injuries. It staggered forward, relentless. Then fury lit its eyes. It let out a deafening roar and released a violent surge of raw black energy that pulsed outward. The shockwave lifted people, monsters, even chunks of the fortress wall into the air. Lawrence quickly erected a magical shield to protect himself, while the others held on for dear life, staring in horror. He fixed his gaze on the behemoth and whispered, This might be the end." All forces are ordered to retreat, and the guards stand motionless, watching in silence. Suddenly, a streak of fire blazes across the sky. Kylie comments that it was incredibly fast and incredibly powerful. Fire magic spirals in the air, before crashing down onto the monster's head with tremendous force. Someone has launched a devastating attack on the beast, striking it so hard that the colossal creature is thrown off the wall. Once again, Lawrence and Kylie stare in stunned disbelief. Joshua lands in front of them and smiles, saying he's glad to be back. A broken piece of the mammoth's tusk crashes to the ground with a deep, echoing thud. Joshua turns his attention to the monster. Its head armor is cracked and damaged, but the beast remains standing. He explains that the mammoth is a giant silver-level beast that has ascended to gold level because of the plague. After infection, the virus corrodes it from within, turning it into a frenzied berserker and pushing it to gold-tier power. But Joshua notes that this transformation alone isn't what allows the monster to endure his blows. He's curious to see its full strength. A glowing energy sphere begins forming near the creature's mouth. The monster concentrates energy into a single point, whipping up violent air currents. Both the sergeant and Lawrence fear this might be the same kind of attack that previously shattered the fortress walls. The beast completes its energy charge and unleashes it in a single, devastating beam aimed directly at Joshua. Joshua calmly draws his sword and assumes a battle stance. Just as the beam is about to strike, he slashes his blade, releasing a surge of energy that dissipates the deadly blast. With that same move, Joshua manages to sever the mammoth's trunk and remaining tusk. His strike is so fierce that it cleaves through the dark clouds overhead, parting the stormy sky. The mammoth is left with a gaping wound that runs across its entire body. The massive beast was split clean in two and collapsed to the ground instantly. Joshua climbed onto the creature's lifeless body and started searching for something among the remains. He pulled a strange object from within the monster, thinking it must be the black dragon virus, a corrupting force that had infected the giant beast and, over time, twisted it into a savage creature. But what exactly was this thing? The system issued a notification. Lifeform identification successful. Ancient item identification failed. Mystical item identification successful. The report revealed that the item belonged to the Marina myths and was tied to an ancient mystical creature, a deep sea dragon demon over 400 meters long. According to legend, it hailed from a world submerged entirely in ocean. Slow by nature and often unsuccessful in hunting, this abyss dragon developed an unusual predatory technique. A descendant of the abyss, this ancient demonic dragon once lived among primitive sea civilizations. As the astral dragon evolved into a mystical item, it enabled sea creatures to absorb nutrients from a host while releasing powerful hormones, enhancing their strength and awakening a primal urge to challenge stronger foes. Later, a higher sentient being altered this blend, weakening the once potent breath of the deep-sea demonic dragons. Joshua reflects, realizing this is the very demonic dragon race from the bottomless sea that was annihilated in the game's epic storyline during his previous life, part of the Mad Dragon disaster plot arc. No wonder he hadn't recognized it. In that tale, the god of justice aided the Iron Dragon god in defeating its arch-rival, the five-colored dragon god, aligning with 6 other human gods to wipe out the neighboring race. The five-colored dragons of the Star Realm then exiled many dragons from their domain, unleashing a dragon-fueled catastrophe across the world. Could this be the same demonic dragon from the bottomless sea, the one later subdued by the five-colored dragons after being cast into the mortal world by the Iron Dragon God and the God of Justice? That dragon was supposedly vanquished by the Iron Dragon and the Church's forces on a sacred island far out at sea. But why had its kind resurfaced on land, only to be manipulated by greater powers? Joshua decides it's best to let it go. For now, at least, the truth remains beyond his grasp. Meanwhile, a wolf lunges at a guard. But just as suddenly, something halts the beast in its tracks. All at once, the monsters pivot and begin fleeing the fortress. Joshua now stands tall atop the wall, gripping the mammoth's severed head in one hand. The guards spot him and declare in awe that their lord has slain the gold-level beast. The count has saved them. Every soldier turns toward him, shouting blessings and wishing him a long life. Joshua tells them, "It's time to sing the song of victory," and the crowd roars in agreement. Some whisper that this must be the awe-inspiring power of fame. Kylie wonders aloud how long it takes for a master to reach gold level, and also harness the power of fame. Lawrence admits he has no idea. Either way, he says, the master has become the perfect successor. Sometime later, Joshua studies the strange item he retrieved from the beast's body. He spits on it and mutters something about the power of glory. The object in his hand begins to emit a surge of intense energy. Energy, he reflects, was tied to wisdom, faith, and peace in his past life. Back then, the power of his glory manifested as purification. But now, in terms of sheer will, he's unsure what it will become. He's eager to find out what form that power will take this time. Fortunately, he's already mastered the breathing technique and the iron body. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have survived leaping from the sky to stomp down on a gold-level beast. Without that training, his leg would have shattered. Lawrence, John, and Kylie walk up to him. Joshua checks on them and asks if they're all right. Lawrence, eyeing the object, asks what it is. Joshua explains he found it inside the beast. Lawrence inspects the strange object and simply says they should discuss it later. A while afterward, a guard confirms that there's nothing wrong with the token. He informs Joshua that the Lord should be in the central building near the citadel. The woman leads her horse and remarks that he finished things surprisingly quickly. She continues on, through the fort's courtyard, following the guard's directions to the entrance. Still walking alongside the horse, she shifts her gaze to a sword standing quietly in a corner. She murmurs that she didn't really do anything to deserve credit. She feels like she's being used as a tool, just a weapon, but admits there's no actual chance of being used in that way. She tells herself not to think like that. She is the master's weapon, his instrument. If he no longer needs her, she should stay composed and wait. Wanting to force herself into his presence is a childish impulse, one that could cloud her true purpose. But still, why is she so afraid he might abandon her? Meanwhile, Joshua remarks that during this latest Black Wave attack, the castle lost all communication for several days. He had thought everything was fine back then. He'd let his guard down. Kylie explains that the black fog was actually what blocked communications, and no one anticipated the Black Wave's sudden attack. Fortunately, the casualties were minimal, and repairs on the fort are already underway. Lawrence adds that now that the wave has passed, the enemy likely won't try again until another gold-level monster emerges. That gives them a window to rebuild, and this time, the damage isn't nearly as severe. Joshua smiles at the news. Grinning, he unfurls a map and suggests they cut to the chase. According to the latest intel, the Black Wave's origin passed through the center of the Black Forest, crossed the southern border, moved westward across the empire, and swept through the central region. After all that circling, it charged directly north, landing here. Judging by that trajectory and momentum, the dragon isn't stopping. It's headed even further north. From this, he predicts that the next battleground will be in the Black Forest. On Moldavia's side, Joshua doubts the Dragon Slayer stone he holds will be of any help. If they get a chance, he says, someone should inform the Moldavian leaders of this situation, especially about the Black Dragon Powder, which blocks communication. That detail is vital. Lawrence assures him that he understands completely. Joshua reflects that back in the 832nd year of this age, in June, a massive conflict finally ignited between the five-colored dragon and the steel dragon, one that had been simmering for millennia, in the outer realms. The five-colored dragon god launched a direct assault on the steel dragon god, joined by the god of justice, one of the seven human deities. Their clash shattered the divine kingdom. The steel dragon god was banished to the mortal realm, taking on the form of a saint and descending upon a volcanic island in the storm-racked southern seas. Just months later, the dragon catastrophe began. This all occurred as the first version of the game's story concluded. At that point, even top-tier players had only reached silver level, and the icy wrath of the dragon scourge swept the land. The southern regions closest to the origin bore the brunt. But this time, with Joshua's early arrival, the Black Forest fortress remains intact, and Moldavia has avoided disaster. Thanks to his foresight, the northern nobility will be more vigilant. The god of justice now has no reason to act, and the civil war among the astral dragons won't end as swiftly as it did before. It may rage for years. Even if the dragon catastrophe returns, it will be for different reasons. That, at least, is a comfort. Lawrence glances sideways at Joshua, observing him silently. Just then, Ying steps into the room. Kylie begins to tell her off, asking what business she has here, but Lawrence stops him, saying they should wait a moment. He wants to get a closer look at the color of her hair. Kylie notices the woman's hair color and wonders aloud if it resembles someone familiar. Joshua answers simply, "She's his butler. She came by just to greet them." Kylie remarks that the servant family has always served the Radcliffe bloodline, but he didn't expect the butler to be a woman. Lawrence chimes in, pointing out that she's at low silver level, something he hadn't known. He admits he wasn't aware someone so capable was serving at Joshua's side. Quietly, Lawrence reflects that the young master seems changed since his return. Before, he was gentle, cheerful. Even after years in the military, he hadn't turned cold or sharp. But this time, it's different. Back when the previous lord passed, Lawrence had been worried. Joshua's softness didn't seem suited to the brutal reality of the North. Now, those old worries feel outdated. He brings up something else, the item Joshua pulled from the giant beast. Lawrence says Meng Feng once sensed a similar vibration in its energy. Joshua urges him to try again, to focus. Where exactly had that aura been felt? Lawrence takes the mysterious object and closes his eyes in concentration. A small magic circle flares into existence above the item. He opens his eyes, staring intently at it. Behind him, an aura flares up, shaped like a dragon with glowing red eyes. He says he encountered a group of white dragons several months ago. Their young emitted a similar energy fluctuation while they wandered the snowy plains. Sometime later, Ying comments that something about this place feels strange. Joshua recalls events that occurred earlier, memories surfacing suddenly. Tani had told him that if he planned to visit Black Forest Fort, now was the time. He had to find his father and Fang. Before leaving, Tani had asked Joshua to remember something important, words that only made sense after becoming a god. Joshua says they should head inside. As he enters, he feels a tremor in his hand. He scans the building and realizes what he's sensing, an anti-magic field. The two of them walk deeper into the structure, where they spot a robed man standing in the center, hand extended. Joshua steps forward and clasps the man's hand, asking, "Could this be what they were looking for?" His hand begins to glow. A voice echoes, announcing that bloodline verification is underway. It confirms a direct descendant of the Radcliffe family, has formed a contract with the divine weapons and meets the qualifications. Access is granted. The channel opens, born from fire, forged in steel, eternal wisdom, eternal steel. Joshua mutters that so this is how it works. Why had he thought otherwise? From the outside, it had all seemed unreadable. According to his memories, the entrance should be right beside this chapel. He still can't believe it was hidden in plain sight. No wonder the divine weapons and seal guardians remained secret for all these years. Yang hesitates, wanting to ask something. But Joshua, already moving, bites his finger and explains. It's a 12-point bloodline gate, a design from Master Theban Borer of the Far South Mages Association. It requires 3 gold-level mages at level 40 or higher. Although the mana cost is steep at first, the spatial gate it opens is remarkably stable. If the conditions are right, it can last over a decade. He lets the blood from his finger drip onto the floor. Joshua says they need to go further. Fang should be ahead. Yang grows slightly anxious watching all of this unfold. They clasp hands and walk deeper inside. They suddenly emerge in a different place. Joshua reaches out and touches a gravestone. A system window flashes before his eyes, with words that read, "The Knights, life passes in the shadow of death. Seamus Radcliffe, 541-." The divine weapons follow the same coded numerals. He stands and moves forward, examining more gravestones, each one paired with a weapon resting nearby. A voice calls to him, "Master," urging him to come take a look. Joshua walks over and nods. She's right. This is the place. He studies the gravestone, remarking that it lies farther still. And indeed, the system window appears again, its words solemn. Perhaps one day, civilization and order will shape the world into something livable, but not today. Until then, someone must make a sacrifice, stand tall, and fight. Will you? A. Radcliffe, 785-Divine Weapon, Fung. Joshua bends down and picks up a small scrap of paper resting near the grave. He unfolds the note, reading the words left behind for him. It is addressed to his heir, Joshua Radcliffe. The writer expresses hope that they would find their way here and come to understand the power that comes with this inheritance. Joshua murmurs that even in death, they still place their trust in him. But what exactly is this inherited power? He notices a small stone nearby and asks aloud what it might be. A system window pops up in front of him. It states that he has obtained an item of origin, a special class object called the Sealed Guardian. As he continues to read, he learns that he has passed the will's trial, the faction test, and even the skill test. This is important. The system begins to relay his class assignment. He is to become the Guardian of Chaos, destined to battle evil creatures and shoulder the burden of eternal catastrophe. As the reality sinks in, his body is suddenly racked with intense pain. Yang, alarmed by the sudden change, rushes toward him, terrified for her master. She asks what just happened. Joshua lifts his gaze and sees another system window, asking if he wishes to accept the heroic class, Chaos Guardian. He glances down at the Azran in his hand and requests the system to perform an identification. The system responds, identification initiated. Initial knowledge, successful. Special object knowledge, failed. Historical knowledge, successful. The identification report comes through. Sealed Guardian, Azure Orb of Origin. According to an ancient sage, even in the bottomless abyss, there exist untouched sparks, unlit flames that carry a special power. The Azure Orb contains history. Thousands of years ago, it was discovered in the depths of a mountain abyss. The sage passed it to a saint with a mission, to calm the tides of chaos and seal the abyss. Since the last Great War, the orb has waited. Though it holds immense power, it cannot be activated by normal means. Class information, Blood of Chaos, Source of Fire. Joshua realizes this is a heroic class quest freely granted to him. It's a rare opportunity, one that allows him to face much stronger foes. He makes his vow. He is Joshua Van Radcliffe. He will rise as the Guardian of Chaos. He will vanquish the forces of evil and accept the eternal catastrophe upon himself. He tightens his fist, which begins to radiate with light, declaring his acceptance of the Chaos Guardian class. Energy begins to surge from the gravestones around him, converging into his hand. His entire body becomes enveloped in that energy. Yang, still shaken and deeply concerned, watches from nearby. The master calls out. Joshua reassures her with a calm smile, telling her there's no need to worry. He watches the scene unfold, recognizing many of his family members. They each hold various weapons, and an overwhelming surge of energy is absorbed into Joshua's eyes and mouth. Yang witnesses this with wide-eyed astonishment. Joshua regains awareness, his entire body radiating with intense energy. As the energy gradually subsides, he realizes this must be the resonance he initially sensed. A system message appears, confirming that he has accepted a hero class task. His class is now Guard of Chaos +5, though he's warned that he doesn't meet the prerequisites to unlock class talents or align with order. Faction alignment and 2 talents remain sealed. Job traits listed include Unburnt Fire and 2 blocked traits. His support job tree is Purify Order Guard, meant to ascend to supreme rank. To progress, he must complete class quests to access level rewards, aptitudes, and traits. Joshua reflects that the diverse energies accumulated by the Radcliffe family's ancestors are stored in the Azure Bowl upon death, then passed on to future generations through bloodline inheritance. When his time comes, his own power will return to the Azure Bowl, destined to be inherited by his descendants. He glances back at the gravestones. A faint smile tugs at his lips as he says they're going home. He considers the 3 dominant powers across this vast realm: the royal family, the nobility, and the church. Naturally, the royal family's authority is self-evident. The emperor's strength is formidable, backed by influence over both the Central Army and the elite 5th Legion. The nobles, on the other hand, gained leverage due to the black tide and the scattered monsters haunting the empire. These factors limited the reach of standard soldiers, enabling nobles across the northern territories to amass significant power, so much so that even a few of their privates could rival the central forces. The Church of the Seven Gods retains deep-rooted public support. Yet in this era of divine silence, they rarely act and mostly observe events passively, choosing not to interfere. Seated in his office, Joshua murmurs that this is all he can recall. He has no information about monsters or dragonkind. For now, all he can do is wait and pose another question. Dan, where exactly is the Chaos-aligned monsters required for this class assignment? Chaos monsters. What are they beyond the demonic ones? The system window displays the mission. A blood-soaked rite of purification using chaos-infused energy. The Azure Orb must be used to ignite the initial flame for the sacrificial quest. Objective: eliminate a target from the Chaos Camp of Silver level or higher. A note clarifies that even nomad dragon beasts and gigantic beasts, despite infection with the Mad Dragon virus, are not truly Chaos-aligned. They merely suffer from madness and possess no Chaos attribute. Ying carries a tray, silently noting that the master seems deep in thought inside the office. Although she isn't sure if he truly needs it, she figures now might be the perfect moment to serve him. She wonders if this small gesture will earn her some praise. But before she can proceed, a guard stops her and demands to know her purpose. She presents a token and explains that she's the master's personal attendant, here to deliver tea. She holds up her badge as proof. The guard nods and allows her entry. She thinks to herself that if she continues like this, perhaps she can become the master's indispensable right hand. But the truth remains, he's incredibly powerful and rarely needs help. Maybe she's deluding herself. Would she end up just serving tea and water forever? As she enters, Joshua, seated inside, mutters that he's incredibly bored. He longs to battle a worthy beast, something that would make his blood race with excitement. He catches sight of Yang and notices that she looks like she's just witnessed something extraordinary. He smiles and says her timing is perfect. Just then, Warrants Kylie and Sword enter the office alongside Ying. Joshua mentions that 3 urgent messages have just arrived via the communication array, and they should all take a look together. The first letter brings good news. The rune gnomes from Lava Lake are aware of the Black Wave. They've long hoped to form an alliance and are offering materials, weapons, and even arrows, all for free. The second letter is about a merchant he instructed to procure supplies. Everything appears to be proceeding smoothly. Now it's time to check the final letter. Count Scarlet of Moldova is under attack by the Black Wave. They've reached their limit and are requesting urgent reinforcements. Kylie, Sergeant, and Lauren all speak at once, asking how they can reach Count Scarlet's estate as quickly as possible. Joshua explains that Moldova is being hit by far more monsters than they faced here. Judging by the complete absence of wildlife near the fortress, it seems that nearly every beast in the Aspen Mountains is converging there. If one traces the movement of the Black Waves on the map, it's clear that everything in their path will be annihilated. Eventually, the creatures will splinter into smaller groups and begin raiding multiple areas. It's likely none of the remaining 3 northern territories will be spared. Sergeant raises a valid point. Shouldn't their communication have been cut off by the Black Waves like theirs was? How did they manage to get a letter through? Lauren replies that Countess Scarlet is a gold-level sorceress. She likely has her own methods of bypassing such obstacles. Joshua nods, saying it's time to start discussing their preparations to support Moldova. He glances at the picture and realizes it depicts origami. He muses aloud. Could origami have truly appeared in Moldova? Joshua had been agonizing over which chaos-type beast he should hunt, but he never imagined they'd show up in such overwhelming numbers. Just then, someone calls out for the Lord. Joshua responds, asking what they want now and whether something else has come up. Sorghum. Kylie and Lawrence kneel before him, and he watches them silently. Sword steps forward and admits that due to the chaos and constant pressure within the fortress, he hadn't had the chance to officially swear his allegiance. But now, the time had come. Joshua remarks that he had assumed their loyalty was already a given. Weren't they all in agreement from the start? That if he succeeded, he would take over the family and rule Moldova? Kylie disagrees, explaining that Sergeant and Fang might not fully understand the young master. But he does. As Joshua's martial arts teacher since childhood, he knows his true character. Maybe the death of Lord Bulwell changed him, made him harder, more resolved. But deep inside, he remains the rightful heir of these lands. the one true Earl. So for Kylie, pledging loyalty isn't a duty, it's an honor. Lawrence adds that until now, they were knights sworn to Baloo Radcliffe, the former Count of Moldova. They were never directly under Joshua's command. But now that the old Count has passed, Joshua is their rightful master, and it's time they made that bond official. He respectfully asks Joshua to accept the oath of loyalty from his father's knights. With solemn voices, the three of them declare that, in the name of life and glory, they will serve as his sword and shield, fulfill his commands, and strike down every enemy that threatens him. Joshua lifts an item in his hand, which suddenly begins to shine with radiant light. He accepts their vow, and in a flash, elf-forged armor and a gleaming sword materialize upon him. He lowers the sword and addresses Zordon, Carl, Cliff, Kylie, Uranus, Fang, and Lawrence, telling them that, from this moment on, they are his sword and shield, steadfast guardians of his honor. He will be their master and protector, and he takes pride in their unwavering loyalty. He tells them to rise, yet he admits he may not be the ideal candidate for their allegiance. He's not skilled in governing territory or in managing finances and trade. He cannot promise them a future of ever-increasing prosperity. But as the one receiving their oath, there is one thing he can guarantee. He will lead them to victory. Kylie, Sword, and Lawrence exchange glances, then burst into laughter. Sword grins and tells the Lord that that promise alone is more than enough. Sometime later, the courtyard filled with the clamor of assembled knights. Some chatted idly, while others looked half asleep, struggling to keep their eyes open. Kylie stepped forward and called out, commanding all knights to form a line. Without hesitation, the soldiers obeyed, straightening up and organizing into neat rows. Joshua observed their orderly formation and nodded in approval. He addressed them with authority, introducing himself as their master, Joshua Van Radcliffe. He reminded them that he had posted a notice yesterday, instructing everyone to gather today for a simple reason. The battle isn't over. A few days ago, they endured the assault of the Black Wave, a swarm of young beasts that surrounded the fortress in an attack unlike anything they'd faced before. The enemy disrupted communications with destructive magic, cutting off any hope of outside aid. At the peak of the onslaught, a gold-level beast launched a surprise assault and nearly breached the fortress walls. Thankfully, Joshua arrived just in time to turn the tide. He wasn't boasting, just stating the facts. This Black Wave was fiercer than any in the past, and even the smallest lapse in vigilance could spell total annihilation. If the fortress falls, the villages and towns behind it will be defenseless, exposed to the ravages of these maddened beasts. Did anyone here want that to happen? In unison, the knights roared that they would never abandon the fort. They would fight to the death before letting the beasts break through. One knight raised his hand and asked why, if the giant beast had already been slain and the Black Wave driven back, and with no monsters now spotted in the Black Forest, Joshua was still speaking with such urgency. Wasn't the threat over? Another chimed in, agreeing. Hadn't they succeeded in defending the fortress? Shouldn't their families be safe now? Was Joshua just stirring unease? Joshua's voice rang out, firm and clear. Of course not. What he said was not fear-mongering. It was the truth. Right now, Moldova, their neighbor to the northeast, was under siege by more than 200,000 beasts. The four northern territories were bound together, and if even one of Moldova's strongholds fell, the entire plan to reclaim the Black Forest from the Aspen Mountains would collapse. The enemy would find a gap, slip through their defenses, and launch devastating attacks from behind. Was it over? Not even close. As he had said before, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Until the Black Wave was crushed completely, they would know no peace. A knight steps forward and asks Joshua what they should do next. Joshua responds plainly. They must act quickly and ride to assist Eastern Moldova. Their task is to help them survive the night. He explains that there are 200,000 beasts there. Even a quarter of that, 50,000, could be overwhelming. With that many, even the vast expanse of the Black Forest wouldn't be enough to contain them. Joshua emphasizes that it's better to fight on foreign ground than let the battle come to their own homes. This may not be a defense of their homeland, but it is a defense of the people and children they love. This situation, he warns, is different from defending their fortress. This time, they are badly outnumbered, and they lack superiority in strength. If the enemy has gold-level beasts and all they can offer are three-peak silver-level officers, then even holding the line becomes a victory. That the Moldovans have lasted this long proves the beasts aren't invincible. Now that he's joining the fray, Joshua assures them they will win. The knights raise their fists high, shouting the word that binds them. Victory! Joshua mounts his horse alongside King and calls his troops to saddle up. They are to follow his lead and ride northeast, toward Moldova. He raises his sword, and the entire army surges forward behind him. Meanwhile, a wounded dragon limps through the skies. Its head is drenched in blood, and one of its wings is badly torn. Another dragon suddenly appears overhead and attacks, unleashing a torrent of flames. The injured dragon lifts its head and barely notices the oncoming fire in time. Later, the wounded beast takes refuge in a cave and collapses into sleep. It begins to growl and shudder as a strange, magical sigil forms in front of it. A disembodied voice echoes, "Give, get war." More arcane symbols flicker into existence around the dragon. The voice declares, "Chaos above all," and taunts the wounded creature. This foolish dragon must make its choice. Dark energy surged around the dragon, encircling it until it was fully consumed. A portion of its body turned pitch black, and just like that, its wounds were healed. The dragon stepped out of the cave, drew a deep breath, and unleashed a thunderous roar. In response, the eyes of nearby monsters lit up with a fierce, glowing red. Maddened and wild, they stampeded in a massive herd toward a single direction. On a distant wall, a woman stood watch. "There are 200,000 of them," she murmured. So much time has passed. Her name was Vale Dany Scarlet, Countess of Moldova. The swarm of monsters had nearly swallowed the entire Black Forest. She believed the last of Moldova's soldiers were already assembled here. It had been 3 days since they sent out a desperate plea for aid, yet no answer had come. A young man approached her and called her name. "Dany." She turned and acknowledged him. "You've come." It was Brandon Cowes. He couldn't understand why people didn't grasp the urgency. If Moldova's fortress fell, the entire northern front would crumble. There would be no other stronghold formed by the mountains to stop the tide. These beasts could sweep through any village or city unchallenged. He wrapped his arms around her and pleaded, "Come with me." Dany looked at him in disbelief. He insisted. This beast wave had already grown beyond anything they'd seen. He could sense an aura of chaos guiding it, something far beyond the Count's or any territory's ability to handle. If he could, he'd beg the Emperor himself to dispatch 5 legions to break this black tide. But until then, she had to leave this place. She couldn't stay in such danger, but Dany shoved him away. The 5 great legions were already locked in battle, swallowed by the monster wave threatening the Empire's central lands. What was he suggesting? That she abandon her people and land? That she survive while letting them fall? She appreciated his care, but she could not walk away. Brandon pleaded with her again. Facing 200,000 chaos-infused beasts, even she, at gold level, might fall. If this were years ago, he would have stayed by her side without hesitation. But now she was a mother. She had their daughter. If she wouldn't think of herself, she had to think of the child. Their daughter couldn't lose her mother. Trees began crashing down near the fort, toppled by the advancing horde of monsters. Dany turned toward the commotion, her eyes narrowing as she saw the immense army of beasts closing in. "We'll talk later," she muttered, urgency sharpening her tone. Raising her voice, she commanded the troops, "The enemy is 500 meters out. Everyone, prepare for battle." Almost instantly, the warriors felt tremors beneath their feet, the earth rumbling ominously. And it wasn't just the army of monsters. Several dragons had now taken to the skies. The warriors rushed to the fort's wall, steel in their eyes as they prepared to confront the monstrous onslaught. Dany issued swift, decisive orders to her soldiers. The beast tide surged closer with each passing moment. The magicians readied themselves, forming magic circles as they waited for her command. Without hesitation, Dany ordered them to strike the monsters. Using the spells prepared in those shimmering circles, lightning suddenly crackled to life, streaking down into the ranks of beasts below. One of the knights shouted that the troops were in position. The offensive continued, with spells and arrows raining down upon the creatures in relentless volleys. A hulking beast barreled toward the fort, trampling lesser monsters in its path. Archers on the wall gasped at the sight, stunned. 2 more colossal monsters had now come to stand at the very edge of the fortress. Both began to gather energy, preparing to unleash a massive assault. One archer yelled to the mages, urging them to erect a magical shield at once. But the monsters had already unleashed searing beams, crashing them against the fort's walls. The archer raised his hand instinctively to shield himself. As he opened his eyes, he saw a glowing sigil, Dany's magic circle. "It's the Countess's barrier," he exclaimed. She was protecting them. Dany scoffed, calling the monsters nothing but annoying insects. She slammed her staff against the ground, and a powerful blaze erupted around her, flames coiling like a living creature. "They're just mindless beasts who only know how to destroy," she growled. Her furious gaze pierced the chaos, fixed on the enemy. A multitude of massive magic circles flared into existence. In the sky, massive magic circles began to swirl into being, and Danny declared that she would reclaim this land with the blood of the beasts. She vowed their sacrifice would mark the turning point in the battle. Raw magical energy surged from the circles, pulsing with growing intensity. Then, Danai unleashed a gold-level spell. Star of Dog. Brilliant blasts of magic tore into the ranks of the monstrous army. As winged creatures dove toward her, someone struck them down in a blur of motion. It was Bell Brandon, leaping into the air to intercept and destroy the attackers. He warned her that they couldn't go on like this. In the past, she could endure such fights thanks to her immense mana reserves. But now, the beasts were relentless, throwing themselves at the fortress, even building mounds of corpses to scale the defenses. Danai grit her teeth, blood trickling from her nose. She showed no hesitation. Even as blood welled in her mouth, she muttered that if she stopped now, more people would die. She refused to abandon those risking their lives for her. Brandon pleaded with her, saying she could avenge them later, but surviving now was more important. This wasn't the time to be reckless. Danny felt the crushing weight of the fight. She still had enough strength to unleash powerful magic, but they were nearing the final limits. The situation was dire. It might come down to brute force. And then the monsters began scaling the wall. A knight shouted, confirming it. Creatures were climbing the fortifications. Danny saw them and kept channeling magic, refusing to stop. The magicians fought to repel the invaders, even as more monsters poured in to attack them directly. The air filled with the screams of soldiers being flung through the air, calling desperately for aid. "The front line's breaking," Danny yelled. "What is that thing?" Panic crept in as she wondered, "Is this the end?" Around her, voices cried out. They had to hold them off, here and now. "We must protect the Countess," someone shouted. For a fleeting moment, Danny thought everything she fought for might be lost right here. Then Brandon's eyes locked on something stirring behind the waves of monsters. Magical lightning crackled beyond the mountains, emerging from an enormous magic circle in the distance. A colossal beam of energy shot forth, slamming into the horde and erupting in a tremendous explosion. The knight stared wide-eyed. Someone else had entered the fray, striking at the monsters from afar. Brandon cast the Eagle Eye spell, and through the thick haze rising from the battlefield, he spotted something moving within the smoke-shrouded horde of monsters. As the fog began to clear, his eyes widened. He could see the banner of the Radcliffe family. He shouted for Danny, calling her name urgently. She turned at the sound of his voice, and her expression shifted to stunned disbelief at what she saw. Brandon confirmed it. Reinforcements from the Radcliffe family had arrived. A voice nearby asked if it was really true. Reinforcements? Brandon nodded, explaining that someone had just hurled a spear from a staggering distance, landing square in the center of a monstrous horde several kilometers away, wreaking massive havoc. They hadn't noticed it earlier due to another swarm of beasts rushing in afterward. Danny's hope dimmed as she said that, sadly, there were only 50 reinforcements. Someone scoffed. 50? That's all? What good is that? This isn't child's play. That's nothing against what we're facing. Another voice chimed in bitterly. They'll be overwhelmed in an instant. 200,000 beasts. Even with our walls, we're barely holding out. They'd be slaughtered out in the open. At that moment, a massive berserker bear vaulted onto the wall right beside them. Danny froze, startled by the beast's sudden appearance. She realized it was too late to cast another spell in time. Brandon, undeterred, slashed at the creature's leg and told her she couldn't lose hope just yet. She had chosen to defend this place, and there was no turning back now. He launched into a flurry of rapid sword strikes, his blades slicing with deadly precision. He added that reinforcements were indeed on the way. The leader of those warriors was a gold-ranked fighter. If the others hadn't held him back, he would have broken through the monster tide and brought 3 more gold-level warriors. With that kind of support, holding this fort would have been within reach. Danny nodded, her determination reigniting. He was right. Now was not the time for doubt. She turned to the soldiers and declared that they would survive this next assault. Raising her staff high, the skies above filled with radiant bursts of light. She proclaimed that they would now witness the strength of the stars. The monsters paused, glancing upward in fear. And then Danny unleashed her spell. Power of Glory. Broken Star Arc. The explosion of light from Danny's spell was so intense that everyone instinctively shielded their eyes. Brandon lowered his hand, squinting as the brilliance faded slightly. He observed that the arrows of light lingering in the sky wouldn't vanish quickly, meaning the beast horde would likely halt their advance, if only for a short while. He urged everyone to make use of the moment while it lasted. Just then, he noticed Danny collapsing and caught her before she hit the ground. She assured him she was fine, just exhausted. With a faint smile, she said she would leave things in his hands now. The hands of the new Earl of the Radcliffe family. Meanwhile, Joshua's forces were tearing through the monster ranks, slaying beasts with relentless efficiency. A knight reported to him that the wave had just been broken by a massive lightning strike, and now the demonic horde was turning its attention toward them. Joshua grinned at the news. He declared that this was the best outcome they could have hoped for. Amid the chaos, he hurled his spear through monsters, thinking this was real war. There was no time to build up strength or hesitate. They had to fight with everything they had. A single misstep could mean death. That danger, he thought, was exactly what drove the adrenaline. He drove his spear into a berserker bear, but the beast grabbed the embedded weapon with its claws. Joshua shoved it deeper, forcing the bear's claws to snap under the pressure. The beast roared in agony, and Joshua flung his spear into another cluster of monsters with tremendous force. Chains suddenly coiled around his arm. He summoned Ying and shifted to the sword form, declaring that they had to push forward without fear. The knights rallied behind him, agreeing with his call. With renewed purpose, Joshua's army charged straight into the monstrous tide. Knights clashed with the beasts, their weapons cutting deep. 3 soldiers worked together to impale a giant monster with their spears. Joshua leapt in, cleaving the monster's head clean off to finish the job. He slowed for a moment, puzzled. Something felt off. Why did the shapes of these creatures look oddly familiar to him? Ying spoke, telling him that the frenzied beast he had just slain was an origami. Unfazed, the warriors pressed on, continuing to cut down the advancing monsters. Joshua commands his soldiers to follow him. Without hesitation, his army obeys, spurring their horses and charging after him. Brandon notes that the radiant streaks from Danny's magic haven't faded yet. A potent magical aura envelops Joshua, extending outward to include his soldiers as well. With this power supporting them, they press on, undeterred by the glowing beams erupting from the ground. Joshua leads the charge, storming through a horde of monsters. Their horses thunder over the corpses of slain beasts, and without slowing, they scale the city wall. Joshua climbs it too. Dismounting, he announces himself. Count Joshua Van Radcliffe of Moldavia has arrived to aid them. Brandon bows in gratitude, acknowledging the arrival of the Count of Northern Moldavia. He presents himself with formal respect as Baron Brandon, a representative of the Cowes family empire's capital. Joshua recognizes the man and instantly recalls his significance. This is no ordinary noble. Brandon is famed in the north, a renowned swordsman known as the Sacred Sword of Destruction. Brandon, in turn, conveys his heartfelt thanks on behalf of Countess Scarlet. Joshua brushes off the thanks, saying the people of the north stand together. It is his duty, as a metaphorical arrow. He then asks if Brandon knows the whereabouts of this region's ruler, Count Verdun. Brandon explains that his wife, Countess Scarlet, is currently unconscious from overusing advanced magic. She's being treated in the central tower and is now recovering. Joshua reflects briefly. So this famed swordsman is married now. Back when the war began, he was considered the continent's most eligible bachelor. Brandon continues, saying that the knights behind him have traveled a great distance. He'd like to provide them with proper food and rest. Perhaps they could start by getting some well-deserved sleep? Joshua fixes him with a stare, then agrees. After the knights depart, Joshua remarks that they're all gone, and if Brandon has anything to say, now's the time. Brandon draws both his swords. Crossing the blades, he chants, "Born of fire, born of steel, wisdom eternal, order everlasting." These are words tied to his heritage, and the weapon he holds is no ordinary blade. It is the family's most treasured sword, the blade of the axe, a sacred weapon forged by the third saint of the sages. Legends call them the twin blades of the guardians of the Holy Land. Just like Joshua's azure steel guardian orb, this sword is a sacred relic, crafted to fight chaos. A new guardian of chaos stands before him, and Brandon acknowledges the meeting with meaning. Joshua remarks that it's true, they really do look alike. He reflects that, as the guardian of chaos, this imperial warrior must have shown up in the north to stand against the monstrous tides. Had he not rushed to Moldova, Verdant Scarlet might have been completely overwhelmed by this black wave. Brandon, despite being a noble only in name, had gained widespread fame across the continent. Joshua muses that perhaps one reason Brandon chose to remain single for so long was Verdon's death. He hadn't expected Brandon to be so deeply attached to her. The man was strong, good-looking, and had an easygoing charm. In his past life, he'd been immensely popular. Or at least that's how Joshua remembered it. Brandon sheathes his blades and mentions that although he only recently inherited the power of the Chaos Guardian, since they're both battling the same darkness, they should pay attention to the shadow of chaos lurking in the Black Forest. Joshua agrees. It's a vile aura. Even while resting near the fortress, he had to take down several young origami beasts. He begins to wonder where the true leader of the monsters has gone. If a gold-level creature showed up right at the start, even if it didn't launch an immediate attack on the city, it was surely preparing for something much worse. Joshua grabs his spear, his body engulfed in a powerful aura. He says that while he expected to face a gold-tier monster in a surprise assault, the reality is frustrating. It's no fun at all. With a mighty hurl, he launches the spear so fiercely that it clears the clouds from the sky. Instantly, the monsters turn their gaze toward him. Joshua mutters in disbelief that it's actually here. They all look up to see a colossal dragon soaring high overhead. Brandon gasps. This beast had been watching them from above the entire time. Dark smoke begins to seep from the dragon's mouth. Without warning, the monster unleashes a devastating energy beam. Brandon, alarmed, shouts that they need to get out of the way. Now! The beam strikes close to him, but he manages to dodge to the side just in time. The dragon continues firing relentlessly. The mages quickly raise their magical circles to shield themselves. One of them clutches his arm in pain, clearly injured. Joshua thinks to himself that the city walls are likely still fortified with Danny's magic, strong enough to endure this level of dragon breath. Yet even while standing beneath the onslaught, he admits that this armor was effective against silver-tier foes, but it simply doesn't cut it against a gold-tier threat. He raises his sword and adds, compared to how he handles dragon breath clad in steel, this beast is getting ahead of itself. With that, he strikes. Joshua slices clean through the dragon's breath, leaving Brandon stunned by the sheer force of what he just witnessed. Joshua fixes his eyes on the dragon circling above the city, and coolly asks if that's really all the beast can do. Brandon, once again, is taken aback, struggling to make sense of what's unfolding as the dragon, along with the rest of the monster horde, suddenly begins to retreat. One of the guards announces that the black tide is pulling back. The land has been protected. Soldiers erupt into cheers, crying out in celebration for their count. In Moldova's name, they raise their voices honoring His Majesty, the Count. Meanwhile, Joshua and the dragon lock eyes in a silent standoff as the creature retreats into the distance. Brandon asks if the monster is actually fleeing. Recalling the breath attack it unleashed, Joshua says he sensed potent chaos energy woven into the black dragon's breath. He confirms that the dragon has been entirely corrupted by chaos, its very core eroded. And this type of transformation is tied to a demonic dragon, specifically one from the Penta-Shade Dragon Clan, the same force that ravaged the Black Forest near Mount Ajax. Joshua reveals he intentionally endured the dragon's attack to analyze that breath. It won't get away now. Brandon, baffled, asks how Joshua knows all of this. The Penta-Shade Dragon, after all, has been secretly in contact with some mysterious being in the bottomless sea. Intel that was only recently verified by the Empire's capital. Not even Count Bill knew of it when he was alive. So how could Joshua? Joshua explains that before this crisis, the Black Tide had already invaded his lands. Old-level mammoth beasts were among the invaders, creatures far more deranged than what's typical under a black dragon's influence. And that insanity, that overwhelming madness, came from an egg. One tied to the demonic dragon of the bottomless sea, Brandon says. The aura of chaos is now merging with what remains of the black dragon's power. It appears the mages in the imperial capital were right. All the dragons from the bottomless sea fled here, likely because their world had collapsed, much like what happened in the sealed lands. But Joshua isn't convinced they're just refugees. He believes a messenger of chaos hides among them. Otherwise, why would dragons accept so many of their kin from another realm and begin to change in strange ways? Dragons, with their long lives and iron will, don't fall easily, but when they do, it's slow and devastating. And once they do, it will trigger a calamity. These astral dragons, capable of interworld travel and reproduction, are not like pure dragons such as the black dragons. Their gift The ability to communicate with beings from other worlds is what sets them apart. Brandon responds grimly. If what Joshua says is true, the danger is immense. It's possible these dragons are in contact with the Void God himself. He hopes Joshua will entrust him with the abyssal sign once the black tide is over. Brandon says he must return to the imperial capital and present this as evidence to the emperor. The threat posed to the dragon race is grave, and it's a matter that concerns not only humanity, but the fate of the entire world. Joshua hands him the egg, carefully wrapped in cloth, and agrees without hesitation. He reflects on memories from his past life's game. How the god of strength and justice once intervened to help the metal dragon god eliminate the dragon god from the mortal realm, and how the Church of the Seven Gods had destroyed a bestial sea dragon demon. There had always been reasons to purge chaos from the world. This latest wave of beasts from the Black Forest is far more complex than expected, but undeniably fascinating. Brandon notices something, turning to his divine machine and telling it there's no need to keep its weapon form active at all times. It deserves to rest. As one of the guardians of the seal, it doesn't need to constantly maintain its divine presence. Joshua, meanwhile, brings up his friend, clarifying that she isn't a man but a woman. At that, the being reverts to human form, immediately ducking behind her master, shy and silent. Brandon chuckles, saying it looks like he's embarrassed her. Just then, a guard runs up, calling out Brandon's name. He turns to the soldier and asks what he needs. The guard announces that the Countess has awakened. A short time later, inside a room in the fortress, Danny joins Brandon and addresses Joshua Van Radcliffe, Count of Moldavia, thanking him for coming to their aid during the Black Tide. His courage and virtue shine like a star, and he has earned the highest honors from the Verdun Scarlet family. Joshua replies that he didn't come only for their sake. Had the Black Tide not broken through Moldavia's defenses, it could have reached his own lands. That was his real motivation. Danny nods. What matters is that he came at all. Sooner or later, that's still better than most. And besides, his armor was destroyed protecting them from the dragon's breath. If he doesn't mind, they'd like to offer him a replacement. It may not be quite the same, but the protection will be comparable. And if he's currently without a weapon, she's willing to provide one. Yang perks up immediately, asking, "A new weapon?" Danny explains that the Scarlet family's capital lies on a river that never freezes. Their annual trade surpasses even that of the Wilson family. They possess a collection of legendary weapons, though the fort doesn't keep them stocked. Giving one away wouldn't be an issue. Yang, wide-eyed, asks her master if he's seriously considering a new weapon. Joshua tells her to stop tugging at him. His clothes are nearly torn from the strain. He thanks Danny for her generosity. If it's armor, he'll gladly accept. But as for weapons, he believes only in those he knows how to wield. Tools he can use to strike down as many enemies as possible. Yang, watching the exchange, quietly notes in her mind, she'll remember this woman with purple hair and the golden-haired man. Danny walks over and politely asks the lovely lady, Yang, if she'd like to pick out a new set of armor for her master. Her butler steps in to guide them to the equipment storage room. Yang clutches tightly onto Joshua's sleeve, visibly anxious as her eyes dart between Danny and her master. Joshua gently reassures her, saying to treat this like a mission. She can help him choose the best armor. How does that sound? Yang immediately relaxes and confidently replies that he can leave it to her. As she heads off with the butler, Joshua turns to Danny and asks how things stand at the fort. Do they still have enough resources to survive the next wave of monsters? Danny answers grimly. Things aren't looking good, especially when it comes to ammunition. Brandon adds that while they're short on ammo, they do have enough food, warm clothing, and coal to keep going. Plus, there are plenty of magicians around to help repair the city walls, so that won't be an issue. Danny agrees but says their time is limited. They can't afford another drawn-out siege like before. If gold-level beasts don't show up, the fort's defenses can likely hold for a few hours. But if they do, and if the three of them step in, then they still have a fighting chance. Brandon points out that a steady supply line is key. If they're well-stocked with artillery, alchemical gear, and enchanted arrows, even a surprise attack from gold-tier monsters wouldn't break their defense. Still, they can't overlook the soldiers' physical stamina. In past years, the beast tides were usually backed by 10 or 20,000 demonic creatures. That was already a challenge, but this time, they're facing the full force of the Black Forest. Armored deer, giant wild boars, winter wolves, white-armored ice bears, and worse. Most are airborne, including mountain giant bats and a few frozen flying dragons carrying a vicious infection. They estimate around 200,000 monsters in total, many of them already infected with the Black Dragon's madness virus. Joshua nods. It's as dire as expected. Still, he wonders aloud why no gold-level monsters attacked the fort earlier. When he defended Black Forest Fortress in the past, at least one such beast always appeared. Danny explains that there are two types of gold-tier monsters they've encountered. The first is the dragon spider. Its thick armor rivals that of a giant crab, and it's resistant to most forms of magic, including dragon magic. Its silk isn't fragile either. It now has the strength of high-level binding spells. The second is the ice butterfly. While not physically imposing, it unleashes a barrage of ice element spells that bring waves of debilitating effects. If the fortress hadn't had such strong firepower, she's not sure how they would have survived those encounters. Joshua states plainly that these monsters are a serious threat. The next time they show up, he'll take them down first, before they can put too much strain on the fortress. Danny pauses, surprised, and asks him to repeat himself. Did she hear that right? Joshua smiles and clarifies. When the next wave hits, he'll target those two gold-level monsters first. With them out of the picture, the city's defenses will have a far easier time holding the line. Some time ago, Joshua stood over a defeated opponent. The man lay crumpled on the ground, muttering that Joshua had managed to surprise him. He laments that even in a world where someone is clearly invincible, it's all meaningless. He's like a starving wolf, desperate for flesh, but forced to chew grass in a field. No matter where he looks, he can't find a worthy fight. He's lost all sense of purpose, unable to grasp the meaning of the human heart. Sleepless, restless, he finds no reason to go on. What could be sadder than that? Now Joshua stands atop the city wall, gazing out across the horizon. He extends his hand and a flame ignites in his palm. He closes his fist, extinguishing the fire, and tells Yang it's late. They should get going. At that very moment, a dragon sits quietly in the distant mountains, far from the city. The beast slowly turns its head, eyes locked on the electric dome protecting the fortress. It thinks to itself, as long as the descendant survives, it doesn't matter how many of the lesser monsters are lost, that swarm of ant-like creatures was nothing but expendable fodder. But this man, this single human, has slaughtered thousands of them. He must die. How dare such a tiny, insignificant creature look upon a dragon with such contempt? That insult cannot be forgiven. Even if it means reducing him to ash and casting his soul into the deepest pit of hell, this human must die. Just then, a beautiful butterfly appears on the horizon, darting through the air and flying straight toward the fort. Danny stares at Joshua and demands to know what exactly he thinks he's doing. Joshua replies calmly, "There's an anomaly in the snowy region, and he intends to investigate it deep in the Black Forest." Brandon sighs, noting that Joshua looks ready to jump into a fight, and nothing, not even the team, will be able to stop him. He insists Joshua needs to listen. Can't he sense it? Does he really plan to go alone into the Black Forest just to find the source of this bizarre blizzard? Joshua answers that, just as Brandon said, he'll check out the snowstorm. But there's no need for alarm. It's only a bit of reconnaissance. Danny protests that he could have at least discussed it with them before trying to slip off. She thought his comments in the drawing room were just bravado. Besides, he's one of the fortress's strongest assets. If something happens to him, the consequences go far beyond Moldova. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the ground near the fortress, instantly pulling their attention away. Joshua narrows his eyes. Could it be a rift in space and time? Yang speaks up, telling her master she sensed something ahead. In the heart of the Black Forest, a horde of monsters has appeared, numbering more than 1,000. Joshua gently takes her hand and says it's fine. He had worried that if he delayed entering the forest, the beast would become too numerous, draining his strength mid-battle. But with all the unexpected blessings he's received lately, there's no need to hold back. Danny, alarmed, asks if he's seriously planning to go to the Black Forest now. He's lost his mind. There are surely origami beasts and feral creatures swarming the area. He could die. Joshua answers that they should just trust him. He brought 50 silver knights. They're more than capable of holding the city's defense. He came here willingly to help, but he has no intention of throwing those soldiers' lives away for nothing. And as he said before, he came here with a goal. Not just to fight the monster hordes, but to confront the Arax as well. He'll do what he must. They can do whatever they see fit. Without another word, he strides quickly toward the site of the explosion, leaving Danny without a chance to respond. Brandon, watching him go, says that Joshua is a battle mage. Yes, he can perform standard spells like any other magician, but his real strength, his true brilliance, is best shown in large-scale war and battlefield defense, so there's no need to worry. Danny opens her mouth to say something but stops, stunned. Brandon suddenly pulls her into a kiss. Brandon tells Danny that if she doesn't act now and break through the space-time barrier, then soon it'll be too late. The gates will fully open, and an endless flood of monsters will pour into their world. These creatures answer to no gods, guided only by a mindless hunger and bloodlust. Magic cannons, stone walls, even armies, all will become meaningless, like weeds trying to resist a wildfire. Their only hope now is to hold the line, to keep death and despair from breaching this fortress. They must push back chaos and restore order. It's a duty, handed down through his family for generations. Yes, he's kept things from her, but it was all to protect her. Her ancestors chose to avoid this world of shadows, and he swore she'd never have to face it. But still, he needs her to understand this. Her husband is no coward. With that, he leaps away, determined to stand alongside Joshua. Meanwhile, Joshua is locked in battle, monsters closing in as he reflects on the nature of chaos. It corrupts spirit, consumes everything, shattering existence, dismantling order, defiling civilization, mocking wisdom. But justice, true justice, refuses to yield. A beast charges at him from behind. He twists, sweeping a magical weapon through the air, reminding himself he chose to fight chaos not out of emotion, but out of duty. With a sword now in his other hand, he strikes, knowing this burden is not just a choice but a calling, even as order and chaos press in from every direction. Whether it's the abyss breaking through, the void collapsing, the evil gods casting spells, or demons from beyond arriving, chaos always comes with a cost. And every time, lives are lost. If he doesn't subdue the chaos soon, a space-time abyss will rupture, letting horrors spill into their world. An apocalypse akin to the coming of the Demon King, something that would demand legends just to hold it back. But Joshua's ready. With a devastating air slash, he tears through the mass of monsters that has surrounded him. He stares down the enemies ahead with calm resolve. The breath of the black, Eclipse Dragon. He absorbed in the last battle now pulses within him, acting as a compass. It's guiding him straight to the beast's lair. Everything is unfolding just as he hoped. Yang warns him, these monsters carry chaos in their aura. She doubts ordinary weapons will do much. Joshua stabs his sword deep, bringing down another creature, and replies that it still works, at least for now. The orb embedded in Joshua's armor begins to glow faintly. He narrows his eyes, asking aloud if the origami form is now encased in crystal. Yang nods and advises him to use her abilities. Her nature is perfectly suited to dealing with these creatures. Joshua assures her there's no need to worry. Her time to fight will come. With a calm breath, he summons another weapon and slams it into a massive beast barreling toward him. Lightning crackles ominously behind the enemy horde, and Joshua's gaze sharpens. Another space-time rift is opening. Yang warns him that adult origami are close by. These aren't just common beasts. There's something far more dangerous. Joshua senses a sudden movement to his side, and instinctively blocks with his spear before countering with a precise strike. Staring down at the writhing creature, he wonders, are these the insects of the Chaos Demon? The rift groans and shrieks with deafening force. But Joshua cuts through the chaos, pressing forward and dismissing the swarm as nothing more than bugs. He spins his spear with a sharp flourish and hurls it high into the sky. The sheer force of the throw sends shockwaves ripping through the battlefield, flattening entire waves of insect-like enemies. But Joshua sees the rift widening. It must be destroyed before it's too late. Just as he moves forward, something stops him, unexpectedly. He glances down to find tendrils of chaos magic snaring his legs, holding him in place. Around him, the ground begins to shift unnaturally, drawing the attention of the surrounding monsters. Yang urges him to hold on. She senses an overwhelming battle ahead. Joshua feels it too, an intense aura rising beyond the monstrous crowd. The earth begins to crack and crumble as something approaches, fast. From deep underground, the terrain explodes upward in a violent burst. Whatever it was vanishes briefly, diving back into the depths, only to surge up again with terrifying force. A titanic beast, covered in countless eyes and gaping mouths, towers into view, plugging the rift with its grotesque body. Joshua lowers himself onto a fallen log, watching it rise. "Stronger than I expected," he mutters. He rises to his feet, sword in hand, its blade still stained with flecks of the monster's blood. "Just a little," he mutters, brushing it off like it's nothing. At that same instant, One of the monsters stumbles, severed mid-motion, and crashes to the ground with a deafening roar. Its eyes burn with fury as it locks its gaze on him. Joshua tilts his head and wonders aloud if it might be easier to take out its legs. A grin breaks across his face. Now it's getting fun. He coats his sword with Dragon Slayer stone, giving it a potent edge, but before he can finish, the monster unleashes a flurry of needles from its mouth, firing them straight at him. Joshua bolts to the side, the beam of needles chasing after him, while smaller monsters give pursuit. He halts and, with a summoned spear in hand, blocks the incoming barrage. Whirling the spear in front of him, he deflects every needle with precision and force. Then, slamming the spear to the ground, he unleashes a shockwave that scatters the rest of the needles like dust in the wind. The monster reels in shock at this display. Seizing the moment, Joshua channels energy into his sword and unleashes his extreme health slash. A massive arc of power crashes into a hulking beast, knocking it to the ground. Joshua pants, winded from the effort. But the monster lashes out suddenly with its legs. Joshua, alert, evades the attack just in time. In a flash, the monster appears beside him, moving with startling speed. It strikes, and Joshua catches the blow on his sword. The force behind it is immense. His eyes catch a strange growth pulsing on the monster's side. Steam hisses from its mouth as its eyes blaze with raw energy. It launches a flurry of vicious kicks. Joshua sizes it up and severs its remaining leg with a clean, brutal cut. The assault ends abruptly as the monster crumples. With a reverent tone, he begins to chant, "Praise the fire from nothingness. Praise the light from the flame. Praise the thunder that follows the light. Praise the brilliance that gives life." His weapon surges with vivid red energy. Without hesitation, Joshua leaps toward the monster and declares, "The source of life, the radiant force, blesses the sanctity of the world." "Praise the sun!" Joshua cries out, swinging his spear with purpose. He channels the extreme sunlight spear technique, launching a spear surging with radiant energy, so powerful that it obliterates the monster's head into dust and continues soaring, punching through its body as it vanishes into the sky. Joshua watches it ascend with a faint, satisfied smile. Then, out of nowhere, a dragon materializes above him, and the sphere embedded in his armor flares with intense brilliance. He begins to look upward, but in that very moment, a searing dragon's breath slams into the earth nearby, engulfing monsters in its path. The dragon keeps up the onslaught for several long seconds, and when it finally stops, the attack has carved out a massive crater in the ground, a smoldering scar of destruction. From afar, Brandon watches the devastation unfold and questions grimly whether Joshua has finally fallen. He can't tell if Joshua is alive, but seeing the city wall's fragile state, he knows it's smarter to pull back. He remembers Verdon's words. The Empire's elite are tied up battling, the black tide in the southern reaches. Yet the north is crucial too. Time slows there, and reinforcements will arrive soon. But once the rift in space and time is torn open, not even that will matter. Energy swirls around Brandon as he declares he won't let Verdon suffer harm, nor let Joshua's sacrifice be for nothing. Hovering in the sky, the dragon peers down and murmurs, "Is it over?" It admits. Even if that warrior managed to slay the spider dragon, he's still just human. And no human could have possibly survived that kind of attack. The breath of a dragon, hotter than molten lava, should have turned him to ash. But then the dragon spots Brandon, streaking past in a flash of blue light. It wonders aloud, was that the power of order? A new, formidable enemy has entered the scene. The dragon steels itself, then veers toward the rift in space-time, preparing for what's next. 2 days earlier, in the Moldavian fortress, Brandon had remarked that the old earl must have died withholding secrets. The azure ball, long believed to be lost, was never anywhere else. It had always remained within his family, passed down as proof of lineage, even though it seemed mundane until their ancestors stepped through the strange, air-thickened gates of space and time. When 4 of them united to slay the origami in the extreme realm, the family's unassuming heirloom, the Radcliffe mascot, transformed. Like a burning thumbprint on the world, it blazed wildly, igniting the sky in blue flames. It fed on the black mist that surged forth after the death of the origami, using it like fuel to spark a storm of radiant beams. Chaos poured from every direction, blanketing all remaining origami in searing light. The monsters, sensing the coming doom, scattered in panic. Those too slow to flee were reduced to ash, erased without a trace. Joshua, watching this unfold, muses aloud. So that's how my ancestor came to inherit the title of Guardian of Chaos. Brandon nods, explaining that they've pieced together a theory. The Guardian of Chaos legacy, thought long lost, somehow fell into the hands of his ancestors. With the continent overrun by chaos for so long, it never had a chance to reorganize itself. Joshua adds, then only the ancestors of the 7 Radcliffes would have known the legend. A grin tugs at his lips. Blood of chaos, source of fire. He trails off, leaving the rest unspoken. Now in the present, Joshua claws his way free from a heap of rubble, sword in hand. Rising to his feet, he looks around and asks if she's all right. She nods, telling him she's okay. A bit warm maybe, but the divine machine can easily handle. Extreme heat. No real damage done. He asks how long she can maintain this form. Ying answers that the contract was infused with strong divine power, so she estimates she can support him for just over an hour, 87 minutes to be exact. Joshua nods, satisfied. That's more than enough, he says. Time to put an end to the Black Eclipse Dragon.